Good day, good evening, welcome. Let me just get set up. We're a little bit early, and the show shall begin. Highway to Heaven, Spiritualism, and Mysticism, Metaphysical Easter Special. Oh, we got a show for you tonight. Let me just share, tell the fam where we are. And all shall begin. Tonight's iconography is provided by Brother Kelvinius Maximus the Great. Back once again like a renegade pastor, D4 damager, power to the people. It's work of genius, if I do say so myself. Now I've got another one that is shared. I will be taking pleasure in putting on in just a moment. If you just let me share this to the usual places. We're going to get Kevin and any available SPL's admin on from about 9 p.m. I need about an hour to set the preface and to set the scene and to go through some material of which you may or may not find interesting. I hope you do. I mean no offence by what is said. I want your input, feelings, thoughts, praise, P-raise, grumbles for this Easter show, or Be East. We go from the west to the east to get enlightened, the attainment of higher knowledge, initiates of self and law. While I've done that, let me just see what else we've got. The other iconography I'd like to share with you, and then I shall start my ramblings. Anders, you're supposed to be here at 9 o'clock. There we go. Anders, I've allowed you in. The governor says yes. But I am going to be rambling for about an hour. Anders, let me know when you're online. Celebrate Holy Week by flogging a banker. It's what Jesus would have done. Fantastic. Genius. Angelic iconography. Anders, are you online? Talk to me. I can't see the control panel because I'm screen sharing. Right then, I've got quite a few screens open here. Brother Anders, would you
Yeah,
like to
can
say
you hear
hello?
me?
Yeah, welcome, bro. You was invited for 9 o'clock because I've got quite a lot of text I want to read out, but you're welcome to stay and chat in the room and do what you do if you'd like to. But the show officially begins at 9 o'clock, interaction wise and chat wise. But I've got quite a lot I want to go through.
Yeah, okay. So this is not recorded, or it is?
Yeah, it's on YouTube. The link's in the admin chat if you want to pick
Okay.
Anders in the room. Talk to me.
Yes, I'm online. I'm here.
Kevin, Claire, yes, good evening. Happy holidays. Thank you for the pictures, Brother Kevin. They are truly genius. Well, well happy with them. So, if it's okay, without further ado, I'm going to begin my rantings, and then once I've finished going through this material, setting the preface, the scene, going through some material that I think is relevant, then we shall begin. Shouldn't take me that long. I'm not going to go too fast, but I've got quite a lot of Easter-related resurrection, rebirth material that I'd like to go through. I also wanted to mention the Highway to Heaven part. If any of you are old school like myself and may or may not remember a late 80s, early 90s TV show called Highway to Heaven, where there was the series was there was a man, he was called Jonathan Smith. He was sent down from heaven to do the Lord God's bidding. I was about 10, 12 years of age, a young boy, and that TV show, it's very nostalgic, it's very old, it's old school storytelling if you like, but it was quite beautiful in itself. If you're not familiar with Highway to Heaven, have a look on YouTube. I'll show you later on the actual series that I'm on about. If you're unsure, you can watch some parts of that should you desire, but the reason why I use John Smith, or I don't ever put Jonathan, but it is a common English name for one. Also wanted to mention, and it actually came from that TV show, Highway to Heaven. So let's do this. The series was there was a man who was called. Anders, you need to mute or turn down the audio if that's all right, brother. Yeah, man. Thank you very much for that. Claire, Rue remembers it. She remembers it. Watched that as a child with my mum, and she loved it. Lol. Yes, it was truly iconic, truly excellent TV. I'm gonna stop screen sharing. We'll get on. We'll put me and Anders on, and let me mute you again. There we go, Anders. This has got an echo. You've got your speakers coming through. Right then, let's begin. Where am I going to go? We're going to talk about the Gabriel Stone. If you've never heard of the Gabriel Stone or the Gabriel inscription, this is going to blow your mind. It was first released and found in 2020, so it's a good 22 years old. It was a bit of a Bible shocker. It's an ancient stone. I believe it was found around the Dead Sea. All right, you may have heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
There is a lot of double speak here.
Yeah, I think you need to turn down. Let me check the order on my headset here. It's an ancient stone, I believe. Yeah, I'm good this end. YouTube's good. It's your end, brother. There's something wrong with your audio setup. Selector, come on, you renegade pastor, sort it out. Get some headphones plugged in. That always fixes it, Anders. Grab yourself some headphones.
No, it's you that have an echo here, even if I'm muting here.
But on the come on, you renegade pastor, YouTube, on my mobile, it's fine. It's as it should be. There's no echo, there's no reverb. It's all good this end. The live stream is good, bro. But thank you for the update. Get back and do your engineering, some sound engineering your end. And where was I? The Dead Sea Scrolls. I think we've all heard of that. If you haven't, please research the Dead Sea Scrolls. But the Gabriel Stone or the Gabriel inscription is where I'm going to start. Like I say, it's a bit of a Bible shock revelation with regards to Christianity and the information, the source of information that came out from that. We're going to touch upon Christ consciousness before 9 o'clock in the next 50 minutes. and I'm going to talk about the bankers, the money changers, the Gospel of John, Rudolf Steiner, spiritualism, mysticism. There's also metaphysical references within the Bible's stories, the passages there. Metaphysical, how would I explain that in a nutshell? The story in the Mosaic Abrahamic publication in scriptures revolves around the son of God. So we have Egyptian mythology with the sun, Ra, the sun god, the various what would we call them, their deities within Egyptian mythology, and the importance of the sun, Aten, etc. But Jesus in the Bible is the son of the Creator, the Lord God. So it's a story revolving, or has a main character in it, the care actor of Jesus, who is the Son. So a heliocentric, we could have a geocentric or a heliocentric existence right now. We're not going to argue on that, but I think it's a good point segue to interject that information. So the heliocentric bibliothèque of the New World Testament, also the Old Testament as well. So these are the areas what we're going to touch upon, and then we're going to open it up after I've set the stage and give you some ideas and information, and talked about those subject titles there that I've just gone through on this Easter Sunday, 17th of April, bank holiday special. So Monday just gone, the 11th of April, was the date prior to Good Friday. That is just, obviously it's Sunday now, so you know what Good Friday is a Christian holiday commemorating the crucifixion of Jesus and his death at Calvary. But it's observed during Holy Week as part of the Paschal Triduum, known as Holy Friday, Great and Holy Friday, and also Black Friday. Not just at Christmas, it's got religious connotations as of this weekend, this Friday just gone. But Monday prior to Good Friday was allegedly, in the greatest story ever told, the Bible I do not belittle. I do find it one of the greatest books with its analogies and its metaphysical references, and its teachings of property rights, titles, Lord God, split title. I'm not belittling it, I'm taking it for what it is, and I will agree that it is one of the world's greatest stories, one of the world's greatest books ever written for various reasons. I don't really put my money on that it's an actual factual depiction of history, and obviously the Lord God is not featured in there with his own hand and writings. They are manuscripted Gospels, chapters and verses alleging to be the word of the Lord God. I've done extensive work on the Bible, researching to do with law, lawful remedy, equitable titles, opposed to legal titles, ministers, ministry, church and state. So those of you that have been with this channel for a while, that are with us on splspro.com, Facebook, Telegram, you will have heard and seen, and perhaps hopefully read some of the publications and seen some of my videos on this channel Indiglo. There is a heliocentric bibliothèque playlist for you to find on this channel. So with that said, Monday prior to Good Friday, Jesus allegedly kicked out the money changers from the church, saying, "My house is a house of prayer. Woe to you bankers and your temple tax." So you may have seen from our equity and trust workshops that there is a temple tax reference with regards to trusts being referenced within the Bible. The word trust is not used, but there are situations and relationships there where the word trust is not used, but trusts are implied. So there's messages in this in these stories, initiates. Whom are we obligated to pay state taxes to in modern times? You know, we're render to Caesar that which belongs to Caesar, render to God that which belongs to God. And remember that within England, the church and the state are merged. We look at why Jesus got angry in that scene, in that rendition, kicking out the money changers from the church, saying that his house is a house of prayer, and getting angry. There's not many examples in the Bible where the JC does get angry. but that's one of them. A bank holiday, bank holy day, you know, and we look at, in my mind, usury is the first link to come to. Usury is indicating the charging of any kind of interest, and as some Christian cultures, and even today in many Islamic societies, imposing any interest charges at all was deemed as usury. Throughout history, various domains from ancient Greece to medieval Europe have indeed condemned loans with any interest. Usury is by modern definition the illegal practice of lending money at unreasonably high rates of interest. Today we've got the interest rates at an all-time inflation, at an all-time 30-year high. Money charges and interest is of great interest to us all right now, with the Mr. Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Treasury Department, the Bank of England, base rates, the GDPR deficit between, you know, the nation state and the private banking cartel, and cryptocurrency on the horizon. So it's quite relevant and prevalent to this story and to my presentation. So throughout history, various domains, you know, have condemned this. Usury is by modern definition the illegal practice of lending money at unreasonably high rates of interest. Usury is usually carried out with the intention of the lender or usurer gaining an unfair profit from the loan. A modern slang term for a usurer is loan shark. Again, with the water and the terminology there, we are the founders of doom and usury. The Medici family came from the agricultural Mugello region of North Florence, and they are first mentioned in a document that I found of 1230. The origin of the name is uncertain. Santos Bonacci was the man that brought me into the realm of the Medici. Giordano Bruno and some other names of which was foreign to me at the time, but Medici, I got onto this through chats and watching Santos's presentations. Medici is the plural of medico, meaning medical doctor. The dynasty began with the founding of the Medici Bank in Florence in 1397. The snake oil sold as medicine. The usury is a noun, the practice of lending money and charging the borrower interest, especially at an exorbitant or illegally high rate. An excessive or illegally high rate of interest charged on borrowed money, interest charged or paid on a loan. We've also got to remember the Pentecost. The Christian holiday of Pentecost is celebrated on the 50th day from Easter Sunday, and it commemorates the descent of the Holy Spirit upon the apostles and other followers of Jesus Christ whilst they were in Jerusalem, celebrating the Feast of Weeks as described in the Acts of the Apostles. So I've got some stuff to read out about Rudolf Steiner and his interpretations of spiritualism and Golgotha in particular. If you've never heard of Golgotha, then get ready, because you're going to be surprised. But I want to break now and go to the Gabriel Stone or Gabriel inscription that was first brought to the public domain in 2000. So an ancient stone claims a leader before Jesus rose from the dead in 3 days. An ancient stone dating back to before the birth of Jesus Christ claims another leader rose from the dead after 3 days, just like the story told in the Bible according to the interpretations that we've been given before us, because obviously the Bible, some of the manuscripts, scriptures were written in Phoenician, phonetic text, Hebraic text, so we have to rely upon academic scholars providing the translations to us. Well, most of us do, unless you can speak Hebrew or Phoenician, Hebraic phonetic text familiar with, which most of us are not. So to believe something and not have any knowledge of it is quite a dangerous thing to do, and so we take it with a little bit, a pinch of salt, and we do a lot of research and we look at various multiple sources to try to find the truth. The central figure to Christianity is believed to be the incarnation of God and the awaited Messiah prophesied in the Old Testament of the Bible. According to the Church, Jesus was born in 4 AD and was crucified under the order of Pontius Pilate, the Roman prefect, sometime between 30 AD and 33 AD, before rising again through resurrection 3 days later. But a discovery made in 2000 may suggest there was an inspiration behind this Bible story. I'm trying to choose my words carefully as to not offend and insult, and just give you the information for you all to decide on how you feel about this. The Gabriel Stone found near the Dead Sea was a tablet with 87 lines of Hebrew text and contained several prophecies written in first person, including an apparent resurrection. It dates back as far as the 1st century BC, and biblical investigator Simcha, what's his name now, Jacobovici travelled to its origin to find out more during the series that I watched some time ago, and that was called Decoding the Ancients. The narrator said in 2004, Simcha has now unravelled many of the stone's secrets, like the writing style, the archaeology, and the way the stone appeared on the antiques market, all point as Perea as its place of origin. And Simcha has also discovered that a rebel named Simon, or Shimeon, came from this area, and that his followers thought he was a Messiah. Israel Knoll believes that he has found strong textual evidence suggesting that Simon's followers were the first to claim their leader rose from the dead. The argument centres on a word mentioned on the stone that is meaningless to anyone except a biblical scholar. The word is domin, which means dung, but Knoll points out that biblical references to domin means rotting flesh. Simon of Perea was a former slave of Herod the Great, who rebelled and was killed by the Romans between 4 BC and 14 AD. Biblical scholar Israel Knoll believes that he is the man prophesied on the Gabriel Stone. The narrator adds, around the time of Jesus, the story on the stone seems to fit Simon and no one else. At first Simon was successful. He defeated a Roman garrison and crowned himself Messiah. But the Romans, they went after him with vengeance and chased him into a Perean gully. After a bloody battle, they decapitated him, and further to demoralize his followers, they didn't allow him to be buried. This is the story Knoll believes he has decoded. Knoll and Mr. Jacobovici headed to where they believe Simon of Perea died. Mr. Jacobovici said, "This makes sense. I can just see a battle right here. A few people could hold off a lot of people, but they can get surrounded. The leader wants to get a better position and runs up to a place like this, but he's chased. They then decapitated him and he falls and dies like this, leaving bodies all over the place. It's very easy to guard, and the dead body turns to domin." So it's like a little cul-de-sac, if you want, in the Middle Eastern territory of Perea that they ran into, and there was no escape. So a bit like the 300 Sparta, where they end up getting a tactical advantage upon their enemy and can hold them off quite well. But there's, in this instance, they're in a horseshoe-shaped, rock-based, walled cul-de-sac, if you want. That's the only way I can describe it. The reference to Gabriel, Mr. Knoll translated the 80 line of the inscription as in 3 days. Live, I Gabriel command you, an instruction to Simon of Perea to resurrect in 3 days, just as Jesus supposedly did. The reference to Gabriel is of obvious interest to biblical scholars, as he is the angel mentioned in both the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Bible. Mr. Knoll believes the story influenced Jesus. Well, no he, sorry, it might be no he. I've got small text here. Let me. So that's interesting. It's controversial. It happened at the time when Jesus was allegedly around. All right, and it's food for thought. If you didn't know of this, then welcome. He said, so actually out of the gravest crisis, a new idea comes. The idea that the death of the Messiah was an essential part of the process of salvation. So the next generation, the idea was picked up by Jesus for his messianic activity. Well, put another way, I believe John the Baptist was a bloodline relative of Jesus, and perhaps Jesus being younger and John, say, being an uncle or thereabouts, may have actually been able to influence Jesus this way. Or the ones that wrote the story were influenced, and the creators of the New World Testament were inspired by this event in history around the same time. However, other scholars reconstructed the faint writing on the stone as a different word entirely, rejecting it says Knowles there, Knowles' reading. In 2011, Mr. Knoll accepted that sign is a more probable reading than live, although he maintains that live is a possible reading. However, the meaning of the phrase in the currently accepted reading is still unclear. Well, yeah, I do believe that the church may be influencing, much like other academic revelations that have come to light, then get edited. There are suppositions sometimes where the information is unclear, when they find any temples of such which shouldn't exist at times that they are found when we were supposedly primitive, but such as Göbekli Tepe, they will say that it was ritual meanings for it rather than the true meaning, and they don't like to admit that history needs to be rewritten. So there is influences from academic, Smithsonian, religious, ecclesia areas. So when facts come to light, then they somehow disappear from the realm and never to be found again, or they revise their interpretations due to pressure from various sources. I'm sure you know what I'm on about, and I'm sure you've seen that yourself. His story. Mr. Knoll still maintains the historical background of the inscription to be as mentioned above. He now views Shimeon's or Simon's death, according to the inscription, as an essential part of the redemptive process. So when I, David, speak of Christianity before Christianity, this information above is just one of my many sources of information that support my claims and theories that the New World Holy Testament and its inclusive stories have either been fictionalized, or there are striking similarities between historical factual history and the Bible stories. The late great Jordan of the Maxwell clan has helped I formulate a true picture of Christ Jesus, along with Rudolph of the Steiner family, Neville of the Goddard family, Alan of the Watt clan family, and Billy of the Graham family, and several others that I can't get into right now. Then we have the echoes. If that wasn't enough for you, then we've got the echoes of the Eastern Chinese philosopher, poet and politician of the spring and autumn period, who is traditionally considered the paragon of Chinese sages. Who is that? Who do I speak of? Confucius. Confucius's teachings and philosophy underpin East Asian culture and society, remaining influential across China and East Asia to this day. And one of his principles is found within the Ten Commandments. Oh, and I've put here, see below and see if you can spot it. So I've done a post today regarding Mosaic and Abrahamic laws in the banking forum of splspro.com. Confucius, 551, circa 551 to 479 BCE, before Common Era, BC, before Christ, long time ago. Confucius was a Chinese philosopher. It was traditionally Confucius' teachings. We've got that. Confucius considered himself a transmitter for the values of earlier periods which he claimed had been abandoned in his time. Now that's something to just let digest and sink in. It's kind of what we're all doing, what this channel does, what the admins do, what SPLS Pro do. We recognise that we are a species with amnesia due to the supposition and deletion and the institutions and organisations that are around us that don't like the narrative of the truth. They call it mysticism and theology rather than actual historical articulate facts. Confucius' philosophical teachings, called Confucianism, emphasize personal and governmental morality, correctness of social relationships, justice, kindness, and sincerity. His followers competed with many other schools during the 100 schools of thought era, only to be suppressed in favour of the legalists during the Qin dynasty. So that little sentence there, suppressed in favour of the legalists. Following the victory of Han over Chu after the collapse of Qin, Confucius's thoughts received official sanction in the new government during the Tang and Song dynasties. Confucianism developed into a system known in the West as Neo-Confucianism and later as New Confucianism. Confucianism was part of the Chinese social fabric and way of life. To Confucians, everyday life was the arena of religion. Confucius is traditionally credited with having authored or edited many of the Chinese classic texts, including all 5 classics, but modern scholars are cautious attributing specific assertions to Confucius himself. Aphorisms concerning his teachings were compiled in the Analects, but only many years after his death. Confucius's principles have commonality with Chinese tradition and belief. With filial piety, he championed strong family loyalty, ancestor veneration, and respect of elders by their children and of husbands by their wives, recommending family as a basis for ideal government. He espoused the well-known principle, do not do unto others what you do not want done to yourself, aka the golden rule. So when I talk of the Bible borrowing influences from other traditional cultures and traditions, if you frequent yourself or you are familiar, which I know a few of you will be, with the 10 Commandments, do not do unto others what you do not want done to yourself. Does that ring any bells? Does that sound familiar? Okay, that's known as the Golden Rule of Confucius, the principles of Confucius. Again, we are here respectfully, with love, in my own free time, to give you extensive research and commonalities within the teachings of the world's greatest story ever told, and to respectfully and honourably give you information for you to consider. Because for me, I need to reiterate, to believe in something and to blindly follow it is to essentially be in a cult, to have no factual underpinnings of the information presented to you, and to take it on blind faith really is a very silly thing to do. Now, our ancestors and predecessors, God bless them, Creator bless them, you cosmically, laws, universal love bless them, they didn't have the articulation and resources and the tenacity that we all have now, and the need for this to come out now and to be presented in such a way. So I haven't really before given you articulation into the way that I feel and think, and the way that I treat these scriptures, manuscripts, and looking around, researching, finding lost books, Enoch, Thomas, Dead Sea Scrolls, Codex, Phonics, and things like this. It's all food for thought there. So enough said, and Creator bless us all of you initiates of self and law. I want to say bless up to all the Trustafarians. And then to move on We're doing well. We've still got 23 minutes before we open it up to admins and go into a full-on Easter special, spiritual mysticism, chat of this nature. I get asked a lot about when I reference Christ consciousness and why I say I come with Jesus as Christ. To quote the late great George Carlin, Christianity, it's a great idea, but when are we going to start practicing it? What did he mean by that? What do I mean by that, saying it now? Well, just about everybody that started a war has held a Bible. Thou shalt not commit murder, thou shalt not kill, the common law, duties and obligations, all of these subject topics and areas are interconnected ultimately as this Christian nation here before us today, having a foreign war policy, tax money, temple tax money going to be invested in funds or to foreign policies that we have, and buying weapons, and that money, temple tax money, being used to buy cluster bombs of nature that the governments profit from. It means that we are part of that, we partake in that. I'm not going to get too heavy on you, but you see here why we are a little bit hypocritical, holding Bibles, the courts with the Bible there. You see the maxims, the 10 commercial maxims of commercial law and biblical references, precepts that come with that. It's all very relevant to this society, going back to the Templars, the Templars, the Masonic temples, and the way that these systems and institutions are designed. Marriage, it's a wonderful institution, is what they used to say. So back to Christ consciousness, a question that I get often asked. Oftentimes when individuals hear the term Christ or Jesus, right away they may fall into preconceived notions based upon their upbringing or a particular religious background. Throughout history, the prospective people have had on the life and teachings of Jesus have been varied and oftentimes even at odds. And we here at SPLS Pro and Indiglo and through our groups and outlets are presenting to you and endeavouring to find a universal non-sectarian remedy where man is to claim the world's resources as our common heritage again. And we include Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, all of the religions, all of the teachings of the world's doctrines in that. There was nobody excluded. And these religions and teachings have got a lot of commonalities with regards to redemption and social conduct in that. And some of the Abrahamic faiths, the three main Abrahamic faiths, are Christianity, Judaism and Islam. They're the three kind of popular ones amongst Buddhism, Sikhism, Hinduism and etc. I recognise that there are atheists out there, and that's fine, and I invite your input to pagans out there. That's the Roman faith before they adopted Christianity, and I'm not getting into the Caesar that adopted and made Christianity the Roman faith after it being mostly paganism. So again, all are welcome, all are our family, and we need to break down the barriers here and have chats about this, because shit's getting real, and that's as real as it is. So what is Christ consciousness like? And trust me, you don't want to stay in that state for too long. That is a state of absolute mental pressure. All cells in life are vivid. Under the light there is nowhere to hide. All implicated in life. Feel and hear so much pain. Always on the edge of the illusion of high awareness and madness. The past and the future possibilities are also there. Every step is a desperate and new door, or rabbit hole I was tempted to put there, but step seems fitting. May make mistakes and explore new freedom at any time. Then you will start to feel. Know so much suffering with error. So what? Although I am not afraid of death, no fear. But survival itself is a basic fear, and almost all implicated. And survival all have the element of fear. Fear is good, keeps you alive. If you had no fear, you'd soon end up dead. Fear is a healthy, to control the fear, not to lose the fear. Fear is, it's okay. False environment appearing real. So what can I do? Simple days in the moment, confused and comfortable, is rare. That's the wisdom I made. And when everything makes sense, fun becomes scarce, surprise and laugh, the less pure part of love, simple involvement. Mutual complaints, these are meaningless, trivial dust, but it may be life itself. Grace, G-race equals God's race. Christ consciousness has gained popularity in recent years as celebrities and public figures claim that they have found truth in this form of spirituality. Those of you that are familiar with Jim Carrey and his revelations on the red carpet with the interviewer once, how he explained that everything's just tetragrammatons, and he gave a really weird speech that I was just blown over by. Nearly is on the same level as Ricky Gervais's Golden Globe speech that just blew me away, and it was on another level. So celebrities and public figures are starting to claim, there are many more that have done so, found truth in this form of spirituality. Those championing this idea sometimes call themselves Christians. However, their definition of the word Christian is far different from the biblical meaning. The name of the Lord Jesus Christ is used as a means of normalizing a religion which is nothing more than rebranded Eastern mysticism. I draw you back now to Confucius and the words that I said featured in the Ten Commandments. I'm trying to layer this so it kind of underpins itself as I progress through it. And that's a fact. So we're going through our Christian disclosure over the years that we're doing this at splspro.com. The Centre for Christ Consciousness websites defines Christ consciousness as the highest state of intellectual development and emotional maturity. Okay, so the teachings of Christ there, the great mysticism, separate from the metaphysical references within the Bible and the other levels of interpretation, Christ consciousness can be defined as the higher state of intellectual development and emotional maturity, being, we say, woke or awake, being conscionable, doing things with a conscience, a clean conscience, clean hands, honourable, following common law. A common law, as we know, commit no harm, injury, loss, fraudulent dealings, having that higher state of intellectual development and emotional maturity, emotional intelligence. And they go on to claim that Jesus achieved this higher state of being in his human life and was given this term, Christ, before his name as the recognition of his achievement of the spiritual status. I believe there is a temple somewhere that's allegedly Eastern temple that has got the name of a man who may be the man Christ, or Jesus, sorry, and he may have visited and adopted Eastern philosophies and certain ways, customs and practices. That's just a segue to put in there that he may have travelled, Jesus of Nazareth, to Eastern realms, because 0 to 33 his life is depicted in the Bible, but there are gaps in the Bible. There are gaps in the adventures, the duties and what he did. There's it's hit and miss, with the areas of which scholars have brought up and said, so the path is open to anyone regardless of their religious tradition, and if and when he or she is open to becoming a living vessel of love and truth on the planet and actively strives to attain it. Christ consciousness is the state of awareness of our true nature, our higher self, and our birthright as children of God. It does not take much research to uncover the ancient roots of this idea. It is the same man-centered philosophy that is behind most religions. So just let that sink in, alright? And we talk about birthrights, they're unalienable rights, inherent rights, are they God-given? You know, where do rights come from? How do we look at rights? You know, children of God. We draw reference to the 82nd Psalm, where Jesus is quoted as saying, "Have I not said that ye are all gods?" Okay, so-called Christ consciousness has been known by various names in history, such as Jainism, Buddhism, Hinduism, and most Eastern mystical religions. And more recently, Deepak Chopra has popularized the Christianized version of this same pseudo-spirituality. The danger in this latest version of mysticism is the use of Bible verses and Christian terms, which can easily lead astray those who don't check the scriptures for themselves and or interpret the stories literally. You know, the literalists have a hard time with some of the premises and interpretations, the layered interpretations, you know, that we can find within these stories. The analogies run deep. The basic premise of mysticism is that man can, within himself, transcend physical existence and experience his own goodness as being one with the universe, being God, or existing on whatever higher plane he chooses to believe in. Tibetan Buddhism, that's why I'm a big fan and a follower of Zen-like ways of life, and Tibetan Buddhism and the teachings of Eastern philosophy, Rudolf Steiner's teaching, Alan Watts, Neville Goddard, and other such thought leaders and researchers and scholars, past and present. Okay, so being one with the universe, one consciousness, we're all one energy. This is what the establishment, the institutions tap into, our energetic resources. We use our energy, and that then is transformed via the systems, the legal systems, the financial systems, and the religious systems, and other systems and institutions that surround us today. It's our energy that they're trying to tap into. We are fed upon by the eaters of Eden from the Garden of Eden, and these legal, commercial, religious, financial institutions that seem to somewhat worship Saturn and Saturnalia type cults, and Saturn being the eater of its children. Alright, so the name Jesus is merely used as a prop in this latest version of the same idea. Jesus is seen as the leader in showing us how to exalt our own inner goodness, and in doing so make ourselves right with whatever deity we choose to acknowledge. Christ consciousness groups claim that Jesus earned the title Christ by perfectly channeling the divine consciousness we can all attain, and they attempt to attribute this philosophy to the Lord Jesus. Those championing this idea are merely using the name of Jesus as a means of worshipping themselves. They desire to find absolution without repentance, confession of sin, or acknowledging Jesus' substitutionary death and resurrection. 1 Corinthians 15, 3-4. Ecclesiastes 1:9 says, "What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again." History repeating. There is nothing new under the sun. This is true of the Christ consciousness movement. Self-designed salvation is merely repackaged under a different name, this time successfully duping those who desire parts of Christianity but not the whole. Invoking the name of Jesus soothes the consciences of those pricked by the truth of the Word of God. It allows followers to imagine they have achieved salvation by acknowledging Jesus in some way while ignoring the parts of the gospel they find unappealing. People have always sought to pick and choose what they like from Jesus' words, even when Jesus was upon the earth. See John chapter 6 verse 66. So that would be 666 of John. Is Christ consciousness a true form of Christianity? The Christ consciousness is a level of awareness where you no longer see error in any action that you do or in any other human being, but see only the beauty and perfection in all things. For the Christ consciousness does not judge, does not criticize, coerce, tempt, does not condone, does not react negatively. So I've said it before and I will say it again. Dance, what a record spins. We shall not be judged by false Christians and those that are proclaiming to come in the name of Christ, that are appointed by the church and are in the ministry and are in positions of ministerial offices, public offices, and used to be known as the Vicar of Christ or the appointed representatives of Christ Jesus on earth, and via extension, we would argue they are false Christians. And we shall not be judged by them. We are of the Chris generation, the Christian. So Chris, as in Christ, but without the T, and J-E-N, or G-E-N for generation, a Christian. It sounds like Christian, but it's actually C-H-R-I-S-G-E-N. The scriptures are clear that Jesus was crucified precisely for criticizing and reacting negatively to the established religious system of his day. Mark 12:12, Luke 20:19-20. He did not see the beauty and perfection in all things. Instead, he rebuked the arrogant. Matthew 12:34, commanded the sinners to stop sinning. John 5:14, 8:11. And made it clear that not even those who thought they had achieved Christ consciousness would inherit eternal life. Matthew 7:21-23. He said that he had come to offer himself as a sacrifice by which sinful man could be forgiven. Matthew 20:28, John 12:27. He did not float about in a cloud of transcendent euphoria. The scriptures allow us to see him grieving, John 12:27, sad, John 11:35, angry, I've mentioned one time of angry with the temple tax and the money changers, John 2:15-17, and confrontational, Matthew 23:33. Christ consciousness claims a belief in Jesus Christ, but it actually promotes faith in one's own ability to make oneself pleasing to God through attitude changes and mystical experiences. Galatians 2:16 states that a person is not justified by the works of the law, but by faith in Jesus Christ, that we may be justified by faith in Christ and not by the works of the law, because by the works of the law no one will be justified. Faith in Christ does not mean we strive to be like him in our own strength. He did not present himself as a great moral teacher. He was known for his doings, not for his writings. He was known for his actions. He was of the... How do we put this now? I forget the exact word now. He was of the craft. He was a craftsman. He was crucified because he claimed to be the only begotten Son of God. John 1:14-18, 3:15-18, John 4:9. Becoming conformed to the image of Christ. Romans 8:29. Comes through the power of the Holy Spirit given to those who repent and receive Jesus as Saviour and Lord. John 1:12, Mark 6:12-2, Corinthians 5:5. The only Christ consciousness the Bible teaches is found in Philippians 2:5-7. Have the same mindset of Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. 1 Corinthians 2:16 says that as believers we have the mind of Christ, but this is stated in the context of the spiritual man versus the natural man, who is unable to understand the things of the Spirit, verses 14-15. That's where a natural man enters also connotations into law, natural person, legal person, straw man, fiction, doing business as, agent, you know, legal person, natural person, oxymoron, natural man. Yeah, okay, authentic man is how I like to put it. When we are born again, John 3:3, we receive the Holy Spirit as a gift. Luke 24:49, Acts 2:38. He enables us to comprehend spiritual things in Corinthians 1:2-14. Serve Jesus from the heart of love. Mark 7:6 and 1 Peter 4:11, and live righteously despite temptations. 1 Corinthians 10:13, 1 John 3:8-10. 1 John 4:1 gives us the direction concerning philosophies such as Christ consciousness. Do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. The consciousness that pleases Christ is for human beings to recognize that we are sinners. Romans 3:23. Confess Jesus as Saviour and Lord. Romans 10:8-9. And love him with all our heart, soul, mind and strength, and our neighbour as ourselves. Luke 10:27. And this is for your optics. Taste some fine old school Coptics. The Gospel of Thomas is a non-canonical sayings gospel. It was discovered near Nag Hammadi. It's an important other area and revelation of recent times to bring into this before we get to 9 o'clock. Nag Hammadi, Egypt, in December 1945. Among a group of books known as the Nag Hammadi Library, scholars speculate that the works were buried in response to a letter from Bishop Athanasius declaring a strict canon of Christian scripture. So religion is Christianity or Thomasine, and the author attributed to Thomas. The language is in Coptic Greek. The Gospel of Thomas, 114 sayings of Jesus. I'm not going through all 114 because time isn't permitting. We approach 9 o'clock. The Gospel of Thomas, and this is the hidden words that the living Jesus allegedly spoke, and Didymus Judas Thomas wrote them down. Judas! And he said, whoever finds the meaning of these words will not taste death. Jesus says, the one who seeks should not cease seeking until he finds. And when he finds, he will be dismayed. And when he is dismayed, he will be astonished. And he will be king over the all. Jesus says, if those who lead you say to you, look, the kingdom is in the sky, then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you, it is in the sea, then the fishes will precede you. Rather, the kingdom is inside of you and outside of you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will realize that you are the children of the living Father. But if you do not come to know yourselves, then you exist in poverty, and you are poverty. So I need to then close down with Anu, Enki and Enlil, the watchman. And it is now prevalent to us in this modern day of 2020, from 1960, and Eric von Daniken and Chariots of the Gods and other such publications and revelations and archaeological works and studies that have been done by non-academic scholars, basically in the private, bringing to light, and obviously the revelation recently in the last 10 years or so of Göbekli Tepe, and the references in the Bible of the Nephilim, renditions of the Anunnaki. Yes, there's enough there for us to then say, and that's all very well and good, David, and I'm already preempting what is going to be said on the screen and comments and feedback, that I for one am with what I've said here in the initial beginning opening stages of the first half an hour of 8 to 8:30, the first 30 minutes. The latter 30 minutes are just analogies and information brought to you from a more academic point of view, and we look at the modification of organic life, flesh and blood, bones, gases, fluids, Perhaps primates, half the land masses, populations are rhesus positive, and we'll say half, I don't know the exact figures and percentages, are rhesus negative. So therefore, where did the rhesus negative population, mankind, beings come from? If we look at the annals of history and we see that there was perhaps more than likely a modification of DNA, we could look at sky gods and aliens, and we've had recent revelations and freedom of informations and disclosures regarding the Department of Defence and Ministry of Defence regarding extraterrestrials. We've had the Vatican say that they will not outlaw that there is extraterrestrials, and if there are extraterrestrials, they are all children of the Creator. That's paraphrased, so they even recognise and admit it's not tinfoil hat territory as what it used to be. There is irrefutable evidences out there that are being brought to us each and every week, and there are disclosures going off left, right and centre. So with all of what I've said, we then have to look at such things, Ahura Mazda, and things such as those, more recent civilizations, and we look at all the civilizations, the Aztec, the Mayas, the Incas, Mesoamerica, the Aborigines of America, the Indians. We look at actual India itself. We look at the Japanese, and the Chinese sutras, the Japanese Shintos, the Chinese sutras, and we have to the Mahabharata. Again, in itself, amazing story, poetry there, and the Bhagavad Gita, the Vedic scriptures, the Holy Rig Vedas, and we have to put all of the pieces together. It's not one man's job, but there are paradoxes in there, and we need to iron out the creases. So ultimately, to close down before Kevin and admins may want to join, is that we've got to recognise that the world's greatest story ever told, the scriptures, the New World Testament, is a fantastic work in itself, but it is the word of man, allegedly with the word of God in there, and the Son of the Lord God, and the Trinity, and we've got to take from that, the messages and interpretations, and it seems to have been highly edited, doctored, and made to fit a purpose, a control mechanism as such, yes. So I'm going to leave that there and wait for Kevin and the admins. That's your cue to enter in. I want to have a look at the chat room. Paul, welcome. I believe there was I need to delete a user there. Messiah's loads of them just roaming around in the streets. Thank you, Kevin. Hello to Bern. G-Man, Jerry, son of Mick. Bit late jumping on, I hope I missed nothing, but big up to all in the house. Austerity being called inflation. Hello to Paul. Boom. There we go, Kevin. This is an hour preface. Jerry slipping into something comfortable. Jammer Funk. See. Hello, brother Kevin.
Hello.
Hello, my man. Thank you for joining. Welcome.
Oh, hang on a sec. I've got a sticker over my camera. Give it a sec. I'm here though. Yeah, how you doing, mate? I thought I'd flip. I was just waiting for you to finish and then jump straight over here. So I've been in attendance.
I know. I've seen. Thank you. Yeah, I've seen you in the chat room there. Keeping it real.
Oh. should have thought about this earlier. I'm upsetting the phone now. Right. I've just got to clean it. You might be able to see me in just a second.
No problem, you take your time, brother.
Was out and about, as you know, meeting people Monday and that. So I definitely have all my cameras and stuff blanked off when we're doing that. Right, let's have a little go and see. Oh my God, it's all falling apart. Oh. Right, press that down there and do that. Oh look, there I am.
Yay. Sorry. Inherited Jordan Maxwell's frog in the throat. What? Hello, Odd Bean.
Hope everybody's all right. I've said hello to most of the people in the room. Oh, that's a point. I'll put me tablet on now. And then I can see what's going on in Tube. Oh, forgotten how to work it.
Anders, you are welcome to unmute and say your piece, my brother. It's good to go.
I just want to say hello to everybody, and I'm hoping that we're gonna have some nice discussions here tonight.
All right, brother. Whatever you feel's relevant. I've said I'm having a breather, need to rest. I didn't get onto Golgotha. If either of you have got knowledge on that, that's something I'll touch upon later on. Rudolf Steiner brought the mystery of Golgotha through his publications to me about the Christ unifies. The mystery of Golgotha saved mankind, forces of destruction. I've got a few books by him and some audios that I found on YouTube from 1923. Steiner discussing the crucifixion of Christ Jesus and the peril of humanity at the time of the mystery of Golgotha. I was quite fascinated by that, but yeah, as long as we mention it, that's enough.
You're okay, Kevin?
I'm not bad, Anders, mate. Happy Easter and all that funny nonsense to you. How's things with you, brother?
No, we are just fine over here. Just
Man.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's put a comment in the chat. You're welcome to join us, Claire, if you want, or you can stay in the chat. It's entirely up to you, but the link's in the Telegram admin chat if you want. Could it
Just
be
take it over.
She says, could it be though that extraterrestrial is the supernatural, terrestrial with an added element like natural with super, again trying to look deeper at the words. Bosh, Bum Shankar, supernatural, extraterrestrial.
That's easy for you to say.
What do you call a man with three bollocks? Extra testicle. That's all we can do, look deeper at the words. And yes, I'm just fascinated by the alien subject, interested by the works already done and the findings out there, the pictoglyphs, geoglyphs, things that are left by ancient civilizations, commonalities between civilizations that are thousands of miles or hundreds of thousands of miles apart, and they had no way of communicating, but they've got the same depictions of deities, and the cultures seem very similar with their depictions of spiritualism that they revered at the time. So there's been a lot given to us that is just unexplainable, inexplicable, and it's some food for thought. Definitely doesn't seem homegrown what we've seen. Any of you want to reference anything or documentaries that you've seen that have blown your mind or caused you to question what you already know from the academic teachings? It is quite fantastical, strange but true kind of line of thought there.
Oh, smashing the place up here now.
You can talk about anything, any topics, anything related to what we're on with, or anything you feel newsworthy, chat-worthy. Kevin, fire away. Hitchens type quotes and renditions.
Oh, don't get me going.
No, you got some. You introduced me to that man as well. Another excellent intellect and somewhat of a thought leader in the way that he presents intelligent, respectful argumentation to Christianity itself, and yeah, the spoken word.
Yeah, an absolute master of it. Maybe not the best person to go and listen to if you're a believer, but yeah, just superior, but massive loss when he died. But yeah, very interesting. You know, it's very. He's the reason for where I'm at today. I don't hold any confusion anymore. I see it for what it is. But I don't take anybody else, you know, I wouldn't disrespect anybody else's belief. I'd rather avoid that conversation with religious types because they won't like what I've got to say.
Some might not, but some are appreciative of the input and questioning. Yeah, most people have a relationship with the Bible, with Jesus, and if you take away Jesus, it leaves a massive gap, and they need it filling, and it's quite a hard transition to go through. But via the mystical teachings and propositions that we found through our discovery and research, we would put in place of Jesus yourself. You are your own personal Jesus in respect of the character, the care actor, Jesus himself there. So it is a great book. It is a great story. It's just unfortunate for us. Well, it's fortunate for us, but it's also unfortunate because it's a great deal of work digging rabbit holes, discovery, comparisons, and trying to articulate the facts of the matter. I've tried to evidence in the first hour some of the reasons of why I have the belief systems that I have, and the thought, the trains of thought, and how we meditate on these subject matters. And you know, with the leaders and the names that I've mentioned there, it helps you discover to know thyself, to find the Pazio is a name I haven't mentioned. Mark Pazio and his teachings and the way that he goes through certain areas of theosophy, cosmic laws, the spirit and the body being subject to life and death in accordance with the laws of the physical world, and the soul life, which is subject to destiny, we'll say, mediates between the two, you know, body and spirit during life on earth. The Egyptians with the bar and the car. It's definitely amazing subject matter to get into when we're looking at ecclesiastical deed poll and looking at claiming rights, titles, trying to escape from legal duties and obligations, and being no respecter of persons, and trying to separate our persons, and looking at the wording of teachings of Franco Collins against Jordan Maxwell, Santos Bonacci, you know, and then looking at how we would what are we looking to do to see ourselves in a whole new light, to be reborn again. You see again, the not metaphysical, but the interpretations of the Bible. To die before you can be reborn, you need to die. If we're all going around believing we're legal persons, there's another baptismal or rebirth, death and birth of not being a person. I'm trying to keep it relevant and on point. You know, we would see that we've gone through a change, and initiates of higher self, to know thyself, to become an initiate, to be initiated, to get on the path, and to die as the all caps, agent, estate, legal name, person, etc., and then to become authentic man, with a soul, a spirit, a consciousness, conscionable, and then a tripart, if you like, and then actually exist again, but with the knowledge and the wisdom to be able to. And that, you must admit, Kevin, going through that process, on that journey of enlightenment and discovery, leaves you at the end of it managing the fear and the legal liabilities, duties and obligations. It lifts a weight off your shoulders, does it not?
Yeah, absolutely it does. As I say, like the KJV, for instance, and the stuff we use, there is a lot of relevant stuff, and it is of benefit to you. That's like other things. So you in that respect. But yeah, once you're in control, it's a great feeling, and how you respond to things rather than react, and then it affects you deeper, your actual character, because that there's no fear, you don't worry about anything, you deal with it, so it is a great process, and I think it all helps. But once you understand and you get control of that fear, and you understand how it's all working and who you're dealing with, it is a great achievement. I think that spurs you on from there to know more.
Yeah. That we all need to go on, and there are levels of interpretation through, like we've used the Bible references for titles, rights, property. It can be construed as the KJV especially, as a banker's manual, a banker's handbook to some extent. It's got references for equity and trust, and we've done a lot of work and research and quotes and chats on this. It's not to be taken so much literally. It's a very, very well written, codified book, and there's that many versions of it as well. Geneva, Jerusalem, New World Testament. It's again a different type. The denominations of churches. We have denominations of money, but denominations of the churches and the types there, and which one is the right one to save your soul, gets a little bit beyond a joke, to be fair, which is why we're having this topic and discussion, and also all the different religions, aside from the denominations of the churches. Then you've got all the different religions around the world, and people are choosing their own, as against to being told what they are. How to connect with your higher self. Do you need the permission of a priest to connect with a higher source energy, or have we all got that ability to connect? As Greg said, I will never forget those words that he said. He says, I don't need to go and see a priest to connect with the higher cosmic forces. Awesome creator. I can connect with them when I'm on the toilet, if I want, at any time.
Well, that's right. That's what I mean. That's why I like the Rasta approach, which is an individual relationship with Jah, as they call whatever it is. But that's why I like that. It's not but they all do. They really do have a personal relationship. So And I think that's what it's all about. You don't need to be going in a big gang and putting your hands in your pockets and handing it to strange old virgin senior men. What's going on?
Indeed. Claire has just joined. Welcome, Claire. Hello. Over to you if you want to say hello.
Oh, that's the end of that then. Evening, Claire.
You.
Yeah, you know.
Hello, everyone.
You know, say it.
How are we doing?
Everyone knows.
Oh, that's right.
Sorry. No, I'm not sorry. How are you doing? You all right?
All good. All good. Been spending days in the sun. Although they had a proper go today, but we did have previous 2 days weren't bad down here at all. But yeah, been cooking myself gently.
It's been a bit down here. Yesterday was glorious, but today was overcast and a few showers.
Oh, no, we were all right. I mean, they were heavy having a go at it all day today, spraying. They seemed to give it up on Saturday and Friday. They seemed to start and then just stop. So it was nice for 2 days down here. But you could sit out in it today, but it was hazy. They were still going at it when the sun had gone down, the bastards. I think we're not due rain till Wednesday down here. You're even further down here than I am, so
Yeah, way down west.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll have a look at the.
So I was listening in my ear while I was getting coffee and making sure everyone was sorted. My mum's watching some.
I'm glad you were listening in your ear.
I meant hands-free. Yeah, I probably didn't need to say that, did I? Anyway.
There
We're
we
clear
are.
with American Sign Language.
What were you doing with your hands?
Making coffee.
Is that what it's called now?
You said, David, about look what you've gone and done, Kevin. Completely.
Oh, that's it. Blame me immediately. It's all Kevin's fault.
Oh, that was it. You said about information with regards to what you were talking about, which isn't coming back to me. But Michael Tessarion is a really good watch. You have to pay for his premium content. I've got a subscription at the moment, actually, and I watched a 10-hour documentary last year that he did on ancient origins. He's Irish but lives in America, and he does a lot about the mystic schools, so tarot, numerology, Kabbalah, that kind of thing. And his theory of the extraterrestrials was really fascinating, that the asteroid belt was a planet that got blown up because the evil system that's running things here set up a decoy on this planet, and whoever was chasing them blew it up. Yeah, very, 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 very interesting view about Atlantis and aliens and us being genetically modified, and yeah, worth a look.
Sorry, I've got to go mobile now.
Oh, we've got to do a runner. Knocking on your door.
Yeah, I've been sat there in his room if I want.
So I have been binge watching Justinian Deception the last couple of days, just to kind of get that language side, what Simon shares a lot about. I've watched it, but hadn't quite fully clicked. Well, it had clicked, but it hadn't clicked, and I can't pinpoint what hadn't clicked, but something's different now this time I've gone back and watched it. So that's quite interesting. I've got some good content on there. They do this process. He rang to get a new birth certificate, and it was just his first and middle name, and the date of birth was the date that the certificate was registered. So for me, that would be the 25th of June. And apparently that's when you get your creditor. You can get access to the creditor from that side, rather than the one we've got, which is the debtor. And interestingly, some other stuff I've been researching with regards to the debit and credit. You know, you have a ledger, it's like the T-bar, isn't it? Credit on the left, debit on the right. Well, the magistrate's court that I was in the other week for the ex-hubby's house thing, mortgage thing, it's like that. The claimant was in the position of the creditor on the side of the room. I was in the position of the debtor, and obviously the magistrate was at the top behind the T-bar. So
I'd like to just stop, and I'm sorry we missed a comment on Michael Tessari and aliens, but we can loop back to that. I've been to Liverpool, if you want, interesting name for itself, to see the Registrar General, and we requested, myself and Smithy, information of full disclosure, of which they gave us verbally. We went there in person, mano a mano, in the flesh, in person, sorry. And we got fobbed off. They wouldn't give us any information. We watched, we saw, and we were directed to and watched the video what you've just mentioned with Justinian deception and the creditor certificate. We then, after being fobbed off at Liverpool, we then, myself and Kevin, sometime later, or somebody, I don't know if it was Kevin, but we rang and applied and used the registration date and did what Romley said. And when I had paid with the credits, the fees, and used the registration date as the date of birth and not the actual born date when you were born and the time later that you just said, what I got back was the exact same birth certificate that I already had a copy of, and it didn't work. I reached out to Romley. I tried to get connected with Justinian Woodlands. Nothing happened on that front, and I was a little bit fobbed off with not being able to get a creditor certificate. So not to be negative on that point, but when I saw that, I was over the moon, and I was ecstatic, to say the least. And I thought, okay, let's try it. And when I rang up before applying to make sure that I was doing the right thing and there was a recognised official process for this, and not to get a duplicate copy of my person's birth certificate with the date of birth being the day that man was born, and using the particulars of which Romley pointed out, I didn't get that. I did later manage to find out that you can get an apostilled birth certificate, which is an authentic copy, apostilled, and can be used to put on the back of the ecclesiastical deed poll. And then later down the line, looking at using the courts of equity and trust law to actually get the equitable relief and equitable remedy, possibly appointing the Treasury as the intermediary office to deal with the Jeremita Estates finances as the financial officer there, and then letting them to liaise with HMRC and such other offices, higher levels of government. I was deterred by the state, the system, the Registrar Generals. They didn't want to play. I tried everything. I did it as Romley pointed out, and I got not very far, which then led me back to what would we call it, their administration of justice in courts of equity, using Treasury and such things as higher levels of government, generals, secretaries, home offices, and so forth, to get this equitable relief and remedy, to become the creditor, rather than us having the legal position and status of debtor and names, date of birth, national insurance number that we've seemingly got at the minute, aka co-trustee of the public trust.
I think it make a difference as if our mums did it. because they were the ones that informed.
Well, what if your mum's not alive? Then that's not equality. Equity is equality. What about those who have lost their parents? Or it might do. I'm not saying it wouldn't. Anna von Wright allegedly put something out saying the same, and I rebutted with, well, my mum's not here. Let's say hypothetically she is, but let's say that you haven't got mum and dad here. Then how do you get out of the Hotel California, so to speak? We're all equal under the law. Equity is equality. So there's got to be. I did like, and I am still pulled to. That's what inspired the evidence of life, essence, and incarnation. The Franco Collins work on the ecclesiastical deed poll, and bonding on the back a copy of the person and claiming it that way, and then letting governments know, what's what, and that under canon ecclesiastical and equity seems to be one of the most still, and that was a good 5-7 years ago we found out about this. That seems to be a way of proving, sending it to archbishops or home offices and treasury departments and requiring of them, asking for full disclosure, letting them know that the executor is in the office occupying as, and trying to get the correction done that way, using perhaps Franco Collins's, rather than trying to circumvent with legal, I don't know, backdoor loopholes that are in the legal realm. There has got to be a universal administrative way that we can employ, using the administration of justice if need be, trust law, the propositions of equity, and then obviously going down, if we need to, misconduct in public office and holding them to accountability in these directions. So I'm all for any which way that will get us to the end point. It doesn't have to be my way. It doesn't have to be SPL's way. It just has to be a way that we can all use, regardless if your parents are here or not, and that's accessible to all, and that's done with the least amount of cost to us and the least amount of faffing around. I'm talking about ink, pens, paper, stamps, notaries, and all the like of that.
And I suppose when you look at applying for a passport, you have to get people that know you, don't you, to witness that you are who you say you are, because obviously you're not allowed to use your birth certificate because it's not classed as a form of identity. So
yeah, there's that as well. You're then reconfirming that you are the legal person, if you like. There are different types of passports and different colours, and military, and for the clergy, ambassadors, diplomats, military, public. There's that to bear in mind, that they do have to facilitate, and there are some exemptions to the rule, and there are statuses and titles that you can obtain are higher than Mr., Mrs., general public level. But what I want to mention is that recently something's been brought to light about coroners and proving that you're here and alive, flesh, blood, bones, gases, and etc., rather than a legal entity and a person, an entity, soulless dead entity, we'll say. And in the Birth Deaths Registration Act, there is an interpretation that birth includes stillbirth. And I said to Kevin in a private chat we had, okay, then if we've got a birth certificate, that's our person, we've come to know it as what it is, a soulless dead entity that comes into effect at the age of majority at 18 when we're legally accountable. If the state and the establishment, the institution as we know it, regards us due to their own interpretations of birth, including stillbirth and exclusio ulterius illness, be meaning that means it excludes birth. Inclusio it excludes birth live, then it's a death certificate in itself. Why then, when we die, do we need to have a death certificate issued from a coroner to say we're...
Yeah, I don't know. It's similar to that setting up a limited company thing as well, isn't it? I mean, I can understand when you look at what a corporation is, that it's a person, it's an entity. So if you set one up, you use that instead. But again, it doesn't, I don't know. I just think I don't think I'd ever write to a coroner and say, look, here, I'm alive. So show that I am. But who knows, that expressio unius exclusio ulterior. So to express one is to exclude others. So would that be about rebutting again, rebutting the presumptions, as you say, for the purposes of clarity and the avoidance of doubt?
Yeah, the status correction. You're going through a status correction where we've used the certificate of birth for formal identity with various institutions and organisations, when the birth certificate is a future security instrument. It's an instrument, a security instrument in itself. It isn't evidence of identity. It's not issued either. Furthermore, the Registrar General's office do not issue birth certificates to be used as evidence of identity. That is not the purpose of them at all, ever. It never has been, it never will be. And it even has a disclaimer in bold at the bottom saying, warning, this is not to be used as evidence of identity. But with that said, institutions that we know of, banking and medical and other institutions, academic in themselves, civil, public, legal, will accept them as evidence of identity. So then we've gone and volunteered to be the debtor, as you like, the soulless dead entity, taking the father's name in vain, the all capital name of Jeremita or of Randall or of Phillips, we'll say, and we've gone to say that we are that. So that shouldn't be allowed to be done. That's an unconscionable, we've entered into a constructive or implied trust there with that. So the Births, Deaths and Registration Act has got down at the bottom in its interpretations and meaning for the purpose of this act. The word birth includes stillbirth, and then with the Latin that you've done there and that I've explored means that that's essentially a death certificate. So therefore we need to correct that error. The National Office of Statistics will be obviously registering, this nation of everyone that's got a birth certificate is essentially legally interpreted as stillbirth, as stillborn. So that's why we then go back further to the certificate of live birth, which is issued by the hospital, the foundation identity document, and then look at later on the registration, which is the birth certificate, which is the death certificate. So essentially you're born and you're living and you've got certification on the identity document to say so. And then 2 weeks, a month, 2 months later, you're registered and you're considered dead. And then there's the ruling of, you're considered dead. The citizenship is entered into, and you're a citizen of the UK corporation when you become 18 and take that title at the age of majority. But that's the correction that we need to go through. The cess decay, going back to the first testamentary, trust proclaimed by Pope Boniface in 1302, convocation, the claiming of property and souls, and the creation of the crown, the papal crown, and the attorney regis, and the subsequent crowns thereafter, the crown state. It all stems from that, which is what attracted me to Stephen Bincham, an expert in all legal matters. And the only stumbling block I had with Brother Stephen was he wanted 5 bank crests, a clear process, which I never followed up due to the lack of funds and not being able to fully comprehend what was going off and not having any surefire referrals or recommendations that this was indeed the way, giving a stranger essentially a lot of money to hopefully get somewhere that I wasn't even sure of the process and it wasn't explained properly. So ultimately it stems from the papal crown, by extension to the monarchy, by extension to the Crown of London, and they're using instruments that are securitized, security instruments, which brings us into the bankruptcy and the insolvency that the United Kingdom and even England is within. The Queen, the monarch is the Queen of the UK and not England. Separate jurisdictions, the City of London, the Templars, the temples again, the church, the ministers. It's we can see the pathway out, but it's now just actually finalising the correct administrative process, language to use, instruments to use to reclaim that initial abandoned security that was done by Mum, and we was all babies, with the Registrar General, and you know, we're interpreting that notion to reclaim the security to then be able to transfer via endorsement and discharge charges, which brings me back to using the Treasury as the intermediary to do this for our estate management, moving from co-public trustee to co-beneficiary of said, or to ultimate shareholder, the title, the sole shareholder of that public corporation, the certified person, the business, the franchise of the UK, you know, the name, the birth certificate for our own purposes, because all we can do is discharge charges when we are in bankruptcy and we've got the private banking cartel known as the Bank of England printing money, lending it to the government circulating it. You know, perhaps the government should be the ones that print and circulate and manage the distribution of money. Why have we got these bankers? Why is this system, this mad mandrake money system of doom and debt, you know, been allowed to form the way it's formed? So it encapsulates rather a lot, you know, as I've just summarised there. And to undo that is where we're at. To be reborn, to die, and to be reborn.
What about then with regards to the capitalization and it being American Sign Language or cartoon speak or whatever it is? And that's the tag on the bottom of the birth certificate is all capital letters. So it's another language. Well, we don't know what the language is. What's your view on that?
You've got Dog Latin, Ancient Latin, Pig Latin, yeah, the continuation of language, the syntax and the grammar and the styles used there is important because there's foreign corruption of text within the same page, and it doesn't actually, it stands separate, and to be able, you can't actually read that. It's like road signs and so forth. We can't really read that. We can read it, you can take it literally, but the styles used and the Oxford grammatical styles, the syntaxing and so forth. The Oxford Manual of Styles Manual, and obviously they've used the Chicago Styles Manual because we've got the SEC, haven't we? Security Exchange Commission running things. We've got Crown Copyright Legalese language. We've got ecclesiastical language. We've got Latin language. We've got English language. We've got American English. We've got all of these languages moving around, so they're all specific to their own jurisdiction and their own constitution. And depending on who you're speaking to, is how you would communicate. But we are not being forced to be able to read or understand any of that language. It's foreign text to us. So therefore, if it's not English, we are not in its jurisdiction, but others are in the jurisdiction. And when we communicate with the jurisdictions of which I've just referenced there, then they have all their own language. So legalese, English, and Latin, Dog Latin, hyphenated Latin, Ancient Latin, you know, belong to the church. Legalese belongs to the law society. English belongs to man. But then when we see all these styles mixed up on one page, block capital, underlined, English mixed in, these are corruptions of text, aren't they? And foreign styles are all there that we cannot actually, if we're going to break it down and be specific about it, we can't read. We would be illiterate at that point. It's not our language, so it's the language of the institution, merger of church and state, and it's a legal merger. Then we've got legalese and church language used, and then we believe and interpret that to be English language, which we've come to find it actually isn't.
I'm tempted to use it in my court appearance next month.
We got David Windmiller corrects parse syntax, structure sentencing. Well, that's another one I didn't mention, but correct sentence syntaxing. Noam Chomsky did syntaxing, structures, and so forth, and the continuation of language. It's depends on whom you're speaking to what language you would use. But I would never use legalese because I'm not a lawyer and I'm not in the law society. I would never use Latin, hyphenated and so forth, because ancient and dog and pig and so forth, because we're not in that jurisdiction. But you could use it to communicate with that jurisdiction and do so effectively, as long as you set out certain particulars within the notice for them to understand. But they should all be able to understand English. We should be able to use English to command as our spoken language, our common tongue, a mother's tongue. You see, when you're little, mum teaches you to speak. Mum teaches, or mum and dad, should I say, but it's known as mother's tongue. So you have learnt the language of the land, the common spoken word through mum, which is mother's tongue. So English is mother's tongue, so to speak. Back in the day, the common narrative for England communication was actually French and Latin. So you've got it wasn't English as such. The Frisians imported English, and the Anglo language was formulated, and the styles and grammar and that, through printing and publication and so forth. But English is derived as late as, and these invasions from up north, Nordic, Viking, Frisian style. So it is relevant, the Latin side of it, not just to the church, but to the landmass, as the aristocracy used and spoke Latin, as well as the church. And then English came later on. French was also a language due to the kings and invasions and battles and things that have been going on. English has come later. Oxford English styles have then been developed. So we have to recognize the jurisdictions and the actual applicable areas to use this. And we are known to use Latin to courts and to officers in public office, and to use as lawful defense, and quote their own, sayings and maxims back to them, because they are governed by that. They are governed by legislation. Those in public office, officers, ministers, generals, secretaries, will understand that, as long as we point out, for the purposes of clarity and the avoidances of doubt, and we are not deemed to be, contracting into or joining into anything. We're just actually pointing out their own rules and obligations, policies that they need to adhere to. And if we need to quote and reference that, then so be it, and hold them to account that way. And we step out of the jurisdiction. We don't claim the name and the title in a court-based scenario or in a public official scenario, because then that would give the venue, the business, the court, the financial, religious organizations and jurisdictions authority over us. If we then represent as the person, as the public person, they own that, they have control over that. If you're saying you are that, then they have jurisdiction and authority over you. So to remain sovereign and to remain private, we must always remember the jurisdictions at play, and not enter into, or not knowingly enter into, because we don't deem it a benefit to us to be known to go by that name. I am sometimes known to go by a name, but only when it is a benefit to me. I use a name, I have a name, and I am using my agent, Mr. David Jeremita, to actually perform commerce, public commercial intercourse, because without that agent and that name, you can't actually do so. But in a court-based civil scenario, you would be then rendering yourself subject to the title of the public, general public person liabilities, duties and obligations. So David would be the creditor and Jeremita would be the debtor, and you've got to use those juxtapositions there to actually try to win this and administer with your estate. Separate.
The difference is because I'm representing the ex, so I've got power of attorney. So it's not my neck on the dock, so to speak. It's his birth certificate. I shall take his birth certificate.
Kevin, are you still here? Have you got problems?
No, I'm still here. I'm sitting outside, just got the mic muted because the neighbours are out. And I'm sitting amongst the stars, but I'm still here and listening. I don't know. I don't know if I'd be throwing birth certificates out in there myself, but you know, only for the reason is the reaction you might get. I think you're articulate enough in your paperwork should suffice alone. That's my personal opinion. I'd be careful.
Thanks,
I'd just be careful, right? Because they could throw a complete fit over it. They don't like it up and tread carefully.
Okay.
All right. I'm not. You do what you got to do, but I think the paperwork you've put together, the facts, the stuff that you've asked to be produced, it's enough at this time. Just be careful, Claire, please.
Will do. That's why I wasn't sure about the language fraud element on certain parts of the paperwork that the other side have provided. I think I'll keep that up I want to keep some bits back.
Don't reveal all your cards. Keep
equity does not aid volunteer.
Exactly. Hold it back and highlight all the stuff, and it can be brought up as well. If you're going to get into the language, then you might want to start going with definitions, etc. You know, you might find you can play against them with their own books if you like, but I think you've got enough. Personally, we all know it's good enough what you've got. Now the hard bit is getting it accepted, but you know in law and even in legislation they've fucked up royally, but it's now your game is to have that noticed.
Yeah, I'm still finalising that all now. So I'll do I'll go up there myself, and I'm also going to send it recorded to various London establishments as well as the local one down here. So in as many as But again, looking at because the court paperwork is obviously fraudulent as well.
Yeah.
The answering some of their questions, like it says, you must by such and such a date, or you know what I've got to do is all in capitals. Also, they've said that I've got to get the defence to the other side by a certain time and date, and the other side were meant to get their evidence to me, and they haven't done it.
Right.
But of course, if it's capitalised and saying what they have to do, they're not going to listen to that if they know what they're doing, are they? Because it's not.
No, but you know, it's must is what I think they call it a modal verb. There's been rulings on this. Must means if you like, if you want to. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. So does it matter then that the other side haven't sent me?
Well, and if they haven't asked for any more, so you've not received them, they've not received off you. What's the big deal? You see, that's must for you. It's optional, basically.
Well, I've still got time to get mine in. They're late getting theirs to me. I've still got time, and I'm like, do I give it to them? Do I?
No, but I push for theirs. Push for theirs. Tell them if yours is still in time. Tell them they're out of time. Let the court know they're out of time. They haven't done what it says. Yeah.
Yeah.
Notice it. Get it. Notice these are all because let's say you put in all this work, hypothetical situation, and you get a shit ruling. Okay. I don't need to go into any more detail than that. Now what you've got is you've built up all this for the judicial review, which is where you'll be going with it, because you'll be going the language, the process, so you've got to think of it longer term as well. Ultimately, they screw up, you're documenting everything to get it corrected. But yeah, the word I say, must, was one of the words, shall, must, might, and all that. It was, yeah, may, that was a DWP
Synonyms.
ruling at the Supreme Court, or ruling against them. You know, they explain that doesn't mean you have to. Not this, you know, so modal verbs, I think, was what they termed them.
Modal terms, did you say, Kevin?
Modal, I think it's MODAL, I think, verbs. If I remember correctly. Please correct me if you discover I'm wrong. I'm sure that's what they're called, modal verbs. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, if they're going to play a game, remember they're going to try and take you off track. So remember your basics, which is, I want to see these documents, you know, deed of assignment, all the rest of it, which you're perfectly entitled to see. And remember, don't let them, because that's what they'll try and do, is run away with it, take you elsewhere, keep to your bait. Well, hang on a minute. I haven't seen, before we get down that road, I haven't seen, this hasn't been produced. We asked for it. What's happening? They've had enough time. You know, that's the road you go down. Good luck. No, I mean that in a nice way. It's not.
I've not been.
They're going to be the problem, aren't they?
Yes.
That's you know, gatekeepers. Nobody's. That's what you've got to get through. But it's strong enough, and you've got enough to say, even if they go against you, judicial review, pull it all up there.
Is that Supreme Court then?
I'm not 100% sure on that. But as you know, you can lodge all your stuff in those places anyway. Can you have a copy of this? Is the case going to say, drop them a copy of everything? Put this on file for me, please.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So is it Chancery and whatnot?
Yeah.
Royal, so you can look at Royal Courts of Justice. You can look at how the Supreme Court is formed. There are 3 courts to the Supreme Court, and for the administration of justice in the High Courts, judicial review, the arbitratory section, or the Royal Courts of Justice, reflecting claims there. If you're not happy, no court's decisions are final. Remembering you have the right to repeal, or as it's known, appeal, and go for looking at again. Why? Because the due process of law may not have been followed in relation to the question you asked. Where is the law that says that you must be able to prove service? It's in the civil procedure rules, the CPR, section 6 somewhere, with regards to due process and how due process of the law is to be carried out. The civil procedure rules, and due process in itself, honour, clean hands, full disclosure, and if you don't get the desired outcome with the hearing, or you don't get discharge, or you don't get discontinuation of proceedings, and it doesn't go in your favour, you have the right to have it looked at again.
Yeah, it's also section 196 of the Law of Property Act. It says any sort of deeds have got to be sent recorded delivery. I think it's section 196.
As long as they can prove and give the strict proof that you require with regards to the parties involved and the parties that are claiming rights and titles to, and that the administration and processes were followed in accordance with the practice directions. The practice directions are found within the CP, the Civil Procedure Rules, the protocols. The civil court practice is managing that, and the areas of appellant stages to appeal as an appellant for a ruling or a judgment would then go through the High Courts and the Courts of Appeal, which form part of the Supreme Court, and equity, courts of equity as well, when the language, the propositions of equity, as well as the civil procedure rules, and you've got that to bear in mind with property, mortgage, mortgagee, mortgagor, and notices, equitable title rights and who holds that, legal title rights, who holds that. Ultimately, the courts, the foundations of the courts are dark and negative. We reference the colour black that they wear. We reference the Black's Law Dictionary. I know that's a name and not a colour, blacks, but it's applicable. Due process of law, it seemingly is somewhat of a metaphysical, to link back in with the Bible and the metaphysics of the Bible and the commercial maxims and the biblical precepts. I found due process of law is indeed a metaphysical cover phrase for these legal conceptualizations, such as corporations and the property rights. These corporations are, you mentioned the word supernatural earlier when we was on about aliens and Anu, Enki and Enlil. These corporations are indeed supernatural entities. They do not have any kind of verifiable existence except to the eyes of the particular faith, and the eyes of the particular faith in this instance are the legal law society, and the rules of law which reference these legal concepts they're just theorems. We look at the jurisprudence, and it's seemingly like a special branch of the science of transcendental nonsense. We look at the courts, the cults, Saturnalia, the reference in what's going on here. It's not our society. That's why we don't use legalese. It's why we shouldn't use legalese, and why we tread carefully the path to get this administration of justice done correctly. We're not attorneys, we're not lawyers. This is a cult. Reference from we'll termify them as cabal courts. They're like religious temples of such cults. Legal, we've found it seemingly is, and it can be quoted accurately, that is in the undoing of God's law. And we reference the Judeo-Christian Bible, and we look at the greatest story ever told. The challenge is laid on the whole of Christianity. We don't have to necessarily be a Christian, but it does help for you to be aware of these particulars and the terms of business that are done within this venue. Court venues, and they are our courts, and we have faith that we can be, delivered, and we would argue that the only way to be delivered in their venues, they have jurisdiction. You see, we go back to the crown of the papacy and the creation of the crown, the convocation, Eterni Regis, and stemming from there, these foundations that are built, what's built, common law is built on. It's we've looked at the foundations of it to get the true understanding, and we look at the original conceptual foundations of faith and law, legal systems, and we reference about this dark shark infested waters. We've got law, legal law, we've got God's law, Mosaic Abrahamic law. We've got statutes, acts and statutes which we use to quote to them to hold them to account to their own rules. They are employees of government departments and courts and obligated as holding public offices, got to be careful not to commit misconduct and miscarriages of justice. They've got to be impartial. All proceedings should be transparent. There's duties and obligations on both parties. Yeah, and this is why then we bring in alongside that the civil procedure rules. We have referenced in the past Halsbury's law. You know, we've used Blackstone's, we've used Bouvier's, dictionaries, you know, Bibles, and we try to keep clean hands. We have to reference statutes and acts and you know, data regulations and procedure rules, practice directions. It's a whole, it's massive, it really is, to try to navigate through these stormy waters. The measure of a man is he that can navigate in stormy waters without any compass or navigation and get back to the shore. And that's entirely what we've got before us here. So, you know, to get due process, you know, done correctly, and administration of justice, to keep clean hands and to navigate through these areas, it's a fine art, and it's something that we're not trained in, and we're not able to do competently as an attorney, but we are able to learn to use these practice directions and the rules and duties, obligations enshrined in the non-codified constitution that is the various legislation that they are governable by, and we are not, as the principal or the executive in office, occupying the office of executive for the estate of. And we have to try to be very careful with the words we use. They may, in some instances, come to the idea that we are free men on the land, and we have to ask them to strike that comment, you know, retract that comment. If you make a statement or you have a belief, then you must have the facts to back it up. If that's a belief, it's not a fact. You know, we're not here for speculation and interpretation. We're here for law. You know, we're at a law level, and we are meeting you honourably, and we are following you know, as the litigant in person often, or the representative on behalf of the defendant. We are a party, Claire and Randall, and when you have power of attorney assigned and recognised, you then take on the legal responsibility for whomever you have the powers of attorney for. So yeah, you're right with saying that it's not you in the frame, but it's the one that your ex, you know, that you're acting on behalf of. But then, because you've got the power of attorney, you are taking on and recognised as the legal authorised representative in office for that named party. So there is you know, areas at play here which are fine, and that's how it works, and that's how it's recognised. But then you are the mouthpiece for that. You know, and I commend you for doing so, and anybody that does so. And it's a lot better doing that and trying that and having a go and doing the research and performing due diligence than it is just to give up and let the venue, the system, the institutions win and get their own way. And to explain some of the legal positions at play, that then leads us into the Latin, because the Templar Legal Law Society of the Inner City Corporation of London uses Latin. Latin is found as in the church, and obviously the courts can be referred to. You mentioned the T-shape section, creditor, debtor, and the arbiter, judge, banker, robe sat at the top, high up, not on a level playing field. They're wearing black. It could be much like a Protestant church. If you look and are familiar with the layout of a Protestant church, and the clergy, the priest, the parishioner, the reverend wearing black, there's a commonality again there with the colour black and the transcendental dark areas that we're going into. They have claimed property rights and title rights via going back to the creation of the first 3 crowns from 1302. They have proclaimed jurisdiction and authority over all man via the proclamations of the papal crown, and you've got the Crown of London. So via their proclamations, the crowns are interconnected, and the Triple Crown runs deep with regards to their belief that they have control and authority by their proclamations that have remained unrebutted and uncontested, which draws us into the realms of Franco Collins's EDP and correction of status, standing and capacity. They've claimed jurisdiction of souls. They've claimed jurisdiction of property. You know, they want you now to enter into a legal realm, and there are legal persons to play, and they just need the personal jurisdiction to make all three jurisdictions be valid for them to have the authority and jurisdiction. So it may sound like gobbledygook and sovereign freeman, you know, hokum to some, but these are how these systems we've come to find intricately work. And they want the personal property, which is the person, to be given to them, to be represented, for them to have that authority and jurisdiction. And so then, because the church is involved from 1302 onwards via the creations of these crowns and trusts, then we have to look at using, in addition to all of what I've said there, to consider looking at Latin, because they have a Bible in the church. There is ecclesia running within the church, and also the court system, because by extension the courts rely and use security instruments to do trade, and evidence of that would be the birth certificate being a security instrument. So draw you to remember what Kevin said, and the danger of releasing too much too soon, but holding your cards back and knowing what to play, planning it out beforehand and having a set process to follow and trying to keep to that process. But security instruments and securitized instruments is what the courts run upon, which are by extension both banks and churches merged into one, especially the high courts there. So the references there, you know, ab initio, you know, in sui juris propria persona, you know, this is all recognized Latin references within the legal church construct that we found there. There is the modus operandi, you know, there's lots of Latin and ancient Latin that they use because of the jurisdiction that they actually operate in, as well as to consider, you know, admiralty, maritime, the various jurisdictions that they can go in. They have a recess and they have an adjournment. If you have an adjournment, that's very key point to note, because that just means that they're having time out and you've already had an adjournment. So it's relevant to mention that they're keeping the same jurisdiction, whatever jurisdiction the court lies in at that time. They're going to come back within that same jurisdiction. That's what the adjournment means. But a recess means that they are now going to go away, halt the proceedings, go away, and when they come back in a short amount of time, they will have changed the jurisdiction of the law. So be very careful with regards to recess and adjournment. The adjournment is the good one, you would most likely want to hear. The recess is it's going back into the back. So recess, we all know in architecture with regards to a cove, a going back, something that recedes back. They go into their chambers and have the recess there, come back and declare, without knowing to you, a different law stream, different law. There's something happening with Zoom. It's alright, I'm just checking a notification. I'll breathe again. It seems to be fine.
What I've done is I've gone through the particulars of claim point for point and disputed or rebutted what the casework, you know, the paperwork is point for point. So that will be what my paperwork is at the moment. And I've put, you know, key legislation in there and some case law. Thinking of maybe putting some biblical stuff in there as well, if I can find something relevant, but all three bases then, isn't it?
Yeah, there's there's a lot at play here, and each case is based solely on its individual merits. No two cases are the same, but for the governing principles and the way that these institutions work, these business venues that they have jurisdiction of, you know, we have to recognise that this is a Christian nation. The Queen Elizabeth, who's the present monarch of the United Kingdom, has swore an oath. The people gave her a coronation, the sovereignty to her, and one cannot give something that one does not possess. It's impossible. So we were and are and can be sovereign. That's self-governing in a way when we say sovereignty, without a ruler, governing oneself. Good self-governance is what I would encapsulate sovereignty as, and we represent pro se, you know, and it goes deep into the Latin and translation into English. In for the skin, you've heard of the saying, saving your own skin. We choose not to hire an agent from the Law Society who doesn't speak to us in the same language, who's oathed to not damage the crown. There is not able to be any damage to the crown because they're all in the same society, that which we are not a part of, but our person is. So it does run deep with the prosecutor. The cuticle is of the skin, to reference cuter and cuticle. You know, it's on the nail bed there. And prosecutor, prosecution, you know, a prosecutor is one, you know, and attorneys and so forth. These English words that we think are English don't, with their etymological root origins, derive from English. They're not English, they're another foreign language that's been encapsulated and circulated and becomes part of our custom and practice, this Babel Anglo that we speak there. And so we've got to save our own skin, going in pro se. Suri juris, you know, propria persona is what the Law Society recognise it as. And again, that's not English and it's not legalese, it's actually Latin. So these are not freeman of the land terminology or methodology. We've learned to be calm, constructive, hold them to account, and then furthermore we will employ statute, act, legislation, practice directions, due process, honour, clean hands, and we will force them to, you know, recognise and acknowledge rights, duties, obligations by their own rules. We don't need, some of us, most of us, a lot, do not need to have the civil court practice directions, acts and legislation and statute before us to speak their law to them before we then speak, if we need to, God's law to them, Christian law, of which they are also duly obligated to recognise. But the judge, the magistrate, the prosecutor, all of these, they don't know, they're not trained and are often not qualified legally in any capacity, and they will need references, and they will need to adjourn, they will need to take expert advice and to go and reference and double check. If they make a claim, they must provide the burden of proof of the material facts of the matter of that claim, otherwise there is no claim. And just to close down, you know, I've written before about Jesus speaking the truth to his accusers. He would justify, when I say the Bible's got, not to you Claire, but for the chat room and ones that are interested on this bank holiday Easter special, the Bible has got references in there that are codified paragraphs that are multifaceted in their layers of possible interpretation. Different editions of different Bibles can be used with different meanings and interpretations, as you've come to find. But the way that Jesus is presented to speak the truth to his accusers, he justified himself by quoting the law, the secular law as it's called, first. And then, you know, he would quote God's law, you know, and he would quote the accuser's law. And he used that against them as well, because the accuser's law is what they're governable to follow, and God's law is what we are governable to follow. So, you know, if you've never read the scriptures, it's somewhere Matthew's quite an interesting area there about witnesses, and witnesses at law, 2 witnesses or more make a fact, testimony, evidences, witnesses on paper, affidavits and certain things like that. And in Matthew, wherever 2 or more are gathered in my name, then I am there in the midst of them. John, somewhere, might be the 10th chapter, of John somewhere in the verses, I and the Father are one, you know, and so there are, you know, the Psalms, I have said ye are all God. So to get away from free man and common law as we known it previously, and to hold our ground and to be respected and to retain and reserve our unalienable, fundamental, God-given rights there in this Christian nation, in our paperwork, then in a nutshell, this is how we look at the esoteric teachings as recorded in the synoptic gospels. So it's down to interpretation and to how you want to look at possible uses of that language, you know, and without coming across as somebody that may need mental health, you know, which is often how we've been presented, you know, we've presented vexatious and not doing business correctly, leading to summary judgments and losing the battle. We was the clowns at some stages in the past, but now what we have learned to do is to turn the court into the clowns and the jesters and let the clowns take over the show. So these are dark and negative areas of which is highly dangerous, but this is a civil matter, and you can look at, you know, Bible allegory uses, you know, and you can look at legal, and you look at any area which is going to be relevant when you're asked if you're guilty or not guilty. You know, when you're uttering these words, many, they don't think twice when pleading not guilty in a court. But if you truly understand what this means and the impacts it has on the matter at hand, the mere fact that a deaf end and a defendant is attending court is an admission of guilt. So we've answered people before, and it's not always fallen on welcoming ears, where we say you can't really argue that you're not the person and you're not legally liable, and you're trying to fight them verbally without any paperwork or constructive, you know, notices and proofs of dishonour, honour, etc., conditional acceptance. And by you attending court could be viewed as an admission of guilt, as an unresolved controversy exists, and the accuser, e.g. the plaintiff, believes a wrong exists somewhere, and it requires resolution and compensation from the defendant. So the fact of turning up, you know, you're already guilty. We look at what courts are. What is you're not in court, you're at court. You can't be in a court. Your person can be placed in a court. You are at court and interacting with opposite parties, and you're there to look at the law, the contract. The appearance can be viewed as a special appearance, you know, as a friend of the court, you could perhaps say. You are there to adjudicate on the controversies created. You know, we are here today to adjudicate and help adjudicate the controversies surrounding the state-owned name. You know, where we look at the word guilty, where does that come from? I believe it originates from 14th century English, Dutch, gilda, from the 13th century Venetian. We look at Italian mixed in with this, a gilda meaning guild or payment in gold, debt or fine owed to the guild. We know of the guild and the guilds that are in existence, the bar gilda itself. Actually 8th century Magyar, Hungarian, kulta meaning gold, the Finnish language. You know, we've got a lot of areas, you know, where guilty means when a non-guild member of the private bar, you know, is present there. And we look at, you know, the private bar guild members, they seek to force either a plea of guilty or not guilty. Where's innocent? Why isn't innocent an option there? You know, why is it always guilty or not guilty? Why can't it just say innocent? So we've got to look at liabilities there for debts or fines that are owed to the state or that guild. You know, and we are not the surety. The surname, the estate, is the surety for the debtor. You know, we're not refusing to pay, because that's also creating a controversy, which is why the conditional acceptance comes in, because there is liability, there are duties and obligations, and you're not holding, or we're never looked at or viewed at to be belligerent refusal to pay. Therefore, that would kind of permit for the lawful detainment of the flesh of the man, the accused, as surety until the debt or fine is paid. The Queen will detain you. You can be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure. So, you know, we are not guilty of the charge. We are not there as the defendant. We are not refusing to pay. We're here to resolve the controversy with the plaintiff. We're not there to give further controversy. It's a matter for the adjudicator, the banker, the judge to determine, you know, this based on the evidence that's going off. So it's we have to resolve this, and we have to be very careful on how we do this with the parties that are involved, and keep clean hands and honour in a very dishonourable, deceptive system that we have got a handicap to, a foreign deceptive system. So it's you know, it stems from us, not, which is then why we consider hiring lawyers. But for those that are saying you're idiots and you should just hire a lawyer or get legal representation, every time there is a court case and a hearing and a trial, etc., there is always the two parties that have legal representation. But having legal representation is not a guarantee that you're going to win, because one party will ultimately lose, one will win, and they will both have legal representation. We look at the Criminal Justice and Courts Act, you know, and with regards to officers and constables, we take from the Criminal Justice and Courts Act 2015, and we look at perjury, corrupt or other improper exercise of police powers and privileges. You know, we look at offences. You know, and if they know or ought to know that the exercise is improper, you know, they could be guilty themselves of an offence under this section and liable for conviction or imprisonment, you know, for that. There's the great amount of wealth of knowledge in England and Wales areas, and the acts and that we can hold them to accountable. You can't use rules and policy to break the law. It's, you know, the Ministry of Justice are involved in all of this in the higher courts. The Crime and Courts Act, we've got lots of areas that we've become knowledgeable on now to hold them, you know, and for them to be following their duties and obligations in their fiduciary capacities in some cases, which is to look after the interests of the beneficiary. This isn't ultimately pertinent to your, you know, case, but for others that are out there, you know, we've got to be careful about the detriments and the liabilities and the privileges and the power and the purposes what they have that they're achieving for the benefit or detriment. So those that are in a public office are required to follow and act properly rather than improperly, as per the sections and subsections of the, you know, laws, acts, legislation for their office. And, you know, the failure that they may or may not commit is to be, you've got to learn to hold them to account. Otherwise, often we have the power to do that, but we don't actually know how to, you know, do that to our benefit. Quite often it can be to our detriment, or you could do everything correctly and there could just be some kind of I don't know now, there must be miscarriage of justice, for want of better term, and then it's up to you to then hold them to account for their offences or criminal offences or failure and duties and obligations regarding the money, or in this case property and payments and so forth. So this is all, you know, food for thought really, I suppose. Administration of Justice Act 1970 is referenced there as well, with regards to harassment, debtors and things, and offences, coercion that's done, you know, under the ways that they make their demands for payment. It's truly a, you know, it causes a lot of alarm and distress and sometimes humiliation.
I've got two hearings for two different companies, because the other ones have done the same process now. So both on the same day. One's at 10 and one's at 10:30. So I'm not going to be I'm not going to be able to leave one room and get over to another room. So I'm going to have to do something about that, getting it adjourned or something. So at least I'll have practice with one before I move into the next one, hoping it's a different judge.
Wow, yeah, that's swift. They've done that maybe on purpose, but seldom does it last 30 minutes. But they're not going to get a lot achieved in 30 minutes. I do suspect that there will be further adjournments while this goes on. You've got to avoid being injured, or the party that you're representing being injured, and you have equitable interests and interests in the property itself. So yeah, it's hard being in man's fictional realm, and we've got to think carefully how we can, consider to abandon our fictional person, the death and rebirth, to ensure abjuration from that realm. God created man, man creates government, government creates person. The legal realm can only exist within man's realm. Without God, there be no man, and without man, there'll be no fiction of man. The legal concepts requires not your belief in any doctrine. So it's it's shark infested waters. Our discovery and our research has shown, and altogether a team effort and continuous work and continuous improvement has shown us this bridge between what we call linguistic, language, codex, code, phonics, Phoenicians, definitions, the subtext written in the Bible and what is written in the legal code is never given to us while we're educated at school, the masses. The church and state are indeed one. They cannot be separated. And we look at the authority of all law based on God's authority ceded to man. If this relationship we're discussing were ever discovered by all and become common knowledge, then I believe that all good men would turn away from the fiction and choose to be free under what is known as the Creator or God's law, to be no longer enslaved by man's the Roman secular, legal fiction, Roman English. The Bible instructs us to escape. When we're looked at as slaves, ants in the colony, the busy worker bees being left to run the machines of mammon, money. We're well on the way to cracking this code, and we share with you what we've uncovered so far. And with whatever anyone's opinion or beliefs about religion and Bible are, they do not apply here, in strict sense. We're not really interested in proving the existence of anything but what exists, that in nature can be proven. The nature of God or lack thereof is for you to decide individually, and doesn't really have relevance within this discussion, and defined are out of the Bible and the legal dictionaries of government. And we try to comprehend these things, are one in the same, and that the Bible would be considered the hidden authority of the secular Roman laws of the men in government and religion. You will have your own revelations and rebirth, and maybe abandon, the ways that you seemingly, worked before. I'm struggling for words. I'm tired, and we have to express ourselves and be a better version. And look at live on our lives as freely as possible, and in the
I noticed.
laws
Yeah.
of nature. Go on.
Sorry, it's glitching my end. Well, interestingly, when you look at, like you said about not being classed as a free man on the land or whatever, but we're not free anyway, because if we go by the Bible, we serve God. God's the master, the creator is the master. So we aren't free. And I think that is something to bear in mind when they try switching or staying that, because if you prescribe to God's law, does that make sense? I think I don't think that any of us are actually free. There are rules that govern us. There is that we're meant to behave a certain way. And I think there needs to be a better word to describe us exiting that system and being autonomous.
Don't you ascribe moralities to the Bible, whatever you do?
Sorry, Bob.
don't ascribe any morality to the Bible, whatever you do.
No, but it's interesting though, isn't it? If you think that, if we're using the Bible and we're saying that, God is, and in the Bible it says, doesn't it? You cannot serve two masters. So it's either God or it's the system.
No respect. God is no respecter of persons. And if you, I can't remember the exact words. It basically says if you enter their game and become a person, you're on your own. It's basically what it says. But no, I'm just sort of. I was taking the piss a bit about the Bible, as I say. I think there's, people. As Christopher Hitchens says, you're not telling me that until they got to the foot of Mount Sinai, rape and murder and robbery and everything was completely acceptable until they got there. It just doesn't make any sense.
No, not at all.
So I don't, there's the morality from the Bible when it basically preaches abandon everything, follow me, forget all your family, your friends. Oh, look, just follow me because everything's coming to a shitty end.
Yeah, we don't.
Slavery, genocide. What more do you want? It's a great novel.
We don't have a religion to sell as such, and we don't mean any offence here. We share our work and our discoveries freely, and we do that in the hopes that we can break away from these supposed mysteries of the legal land and mysteries of the Bible. We're trying to reveal what it truly is to be free and to live in peace among all men under the various teachings, and our own doctrines. All men must know our words or be permanently stuck in their already existing bondage, is what we would say. Bondage, surety to the religion of the church and state here in England, the United Kingdom corporation, when you're publicly active, commercially active. Ultimately the church and state are one of the same thing. And the church and the state, that includes the courts, where we look at incorporated. One is incorporated with the other. Laughably calling themselves non-profits, but they not-for-profit. How prophetic. Perhaps non-profits would be more like it. In short, we want to help all our family and save you from your fictional selves. We want you to consider to stop taking part in your own kind of demonic possession of an artificial person, is what we could call it. Possession is 9/10 of the law. Remember that axiom. It's a madness. It's the legal fiction that we know of. The government's fiction or laws only apply to them. The laws of men do not apply to man at all. They apply to commerce and persons. If you claim and possess man's fictional demon or the citizen, as your person, 9/10 of man law, it's only applicable to the government's own property. We learn the trick to distinguish between the Bible and the laws of nature and God, and when it's man acting as God and vicar.
Interesting, the etymology.
Which bit? What?
Sorry, there was a lag again.
No,
It's a lag my end. Old English frio, exempt from, not in bondage, acting of one's own will, also noble, joyful. From Proto-Germanic frias, beloved, not in bondage. Source also of Old Frisian free, Old Saxon vri, Old High German vri, and German frey. Dutch vri with a J on the end. From pi, priya, dear beloved. From the root pre, to love.
No, thank you. Brilliant. That is interesting. Love always saves the day.
Mm-hmm.
We'll say there.
Well, it's the opposite of
Eventually.
fear as well, isn't it? And they use fear to keep the system going, don't they? And they're sort of polar opposites. You know, if you're in a state of love, you can't be in a state of fear, really. It can't coexist consciously.
We've got to save ourselves consciously to stop, you know, acting or impersonating, you know, something else that is not under God or in nature. We need to learn to cease to be the artificial person, and doing that is actually saving yourself and acting under the Creator, the Lord God, going back to nature again, which is in the Bible, you know, referenced as becoming a Christian. You know, in religion they will tell you that you can be saved and still be a citizen. Well, that's just BS. You know, religion, as we've seen, seeks to control us through fiction under the doctrine and various doctrines that they have. The government is a religion. If you believe in it, you know, it could be construed as a religion. The doctrines that we find are contrary to the very essence of nature, the nature of life itself. A person is never natural. You know, thus by default is contrary to the Bible's teaching. You've got to look at either saving yourself under the codes and references that are given in the Bible from God, from Jesus, or you can choose to remain a debtor, a person subject to man. You know, again, as Claire's mentioned, you cannot serve the two masters. You must make a choice to choose between, you know, I use the term loosely, but God and or mammon. To be born again is to quit using your artificial person and to be reborn into this life on earth. To use a name, you know, we saw those billboards years ago, is legal fraud explained. You know, we've got to look at becoming, with the civil administrative remedy and getting equitable relief, civilly dead and inactive, no longer a volunteer. You know, we're looking to go into equitable realms, and we're a long way from bros if John of the Harris family left us, and common law as we know it. We're a long way away from that. So it's the reborn, rebirth, Easter, and what we're doing, touching on Christianity and the teachings of Jesus in the Bible. The 82nd Psalm, have I not said that ye are all gods? I and the Father are one. You know, it's coming with Jesus as a Christ-like consciousness to, you know, go back to the beginning of what we've talked about, you know, throughout this cast and throughout the stream. It's easy to say, it's harder to put it into practice, to obtain the highway to heaven, you know, within this spiritualism and mysticism and metaphysical, everything we've got. I'm glad that you remembered that and you looked upon that reference there, Claire, because as a 12-year-old boy, I was encapsulated by those stories. It was just interesting TV, great storytelling, wholesome in itself. You know, Jonathan Smith, the angel sent to earth to carry out the wishes of the Creator Lord, and his friend that he had with him as well with the beard, I forget his name, but that's where I got John Smith from. It's stuck with me, and you know, I know there's John Smith of the common law, and John Smith's quite a popular English name, but still, that Jonathan Smith inspired me as a young wee boy. What else? Do we have a look at the
His
room?
friend was called
Oh, you're on it, are you?
Mark Gordon. Mark Gordon, Jonathan Smith. Yeah.
I'm just going into the chat room. We'll look at closing down in about the next 15 minutes, if that's all right. Claire and Kevin.
Yeah, you've been at it 3 hours.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all. Yeah, I like it. This is hopefully, you know, interesting to others. I've done some videos today on this channel that might be of interest. The rule against perpetuities, those that are interested in following us for equity and trust, especially within last will and testament terms. I've listened to what you've said. I've listened to your questions, the most frequently asked questions. I'm trying to be constructive and articulate with the new content we're producing and that I'm producing. This rule against perpetuities is a 2-part short video that goes with the other 3 videos I've done so far with the certainty of intention. We're going to go through the certainty of subject matter in 3 short videos and the certainty of objects, so that will then help you all be able to express private trusts and have them enforceable under the laws of England, recognisable. I've got a lot of case law in there with that, so please check the videos that I've recently done on this channel. And the other short one was the DVLA, title rights, equitable title, legal title, and how we go about undoing that. I've got a nice legal DVLA, legal, lawful, equitable playlist on this channel as well that might be of interest to some. I think vehicles, automobiles, iron horses are a vulnerable asset that we ought to look at protecting, and I'm going to go for misconduct in the public office, disclaiming duties, and hold duly and the DVLA wholly accountable for their misconduct and breaches. I'm going to hold Grant Shap, the Ministry of Transport, secretaries and ministers accountable. I'm going to be serving them and following through and getting some closure one way or the other from the processes what I've used that I believe to be honourable and correct. And I'm building up my case as time goes on. I've reported to the ICO and regulators with regards to data and management. I've served at Section 10 of the 1998 Data Protection Act for them to stop processing data on my person and estate until legitimate interest and validity is proven. They're in dishonest and breaches there, so they're at a fault position, a position of fault. So I'm working through that painstakingly, and I took some time out today to go through title rights. There's ambiguous suppositions within arguments regarding DVLA, property, registration, ownership. And ownership is an interesting area in itself. Legal title, equitable title, property rights, again, coming into play. A lot of this is interchangeable. But yeah, that was a nice couple of videos done today, and I hope that the content is satisfactory.
Going back to the birth certificate then, and the stillbirth. Could it be that we've got, I know there's obviously the stillbirth side, as in, you know, a mum sadly having that thing happen. But what if it's because it's in a dry dock? And it's still because it's not on the waves.
Go on, be more specific, please. Could you explain that a bit further?
Well, you know, the whole birthing and being, you know, we have docks, the doctor, the docked, or we're in a dock, but it's a dry dock, isn't it? Because we're on the land. A ship to be repaired or to be created and made is done in a dry dock, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an
So a
interesting.
dry dock wouldn't move like the ocean, it would be still.
Claire, you've gone. Oh, are you there?
Yeah, no, I'm here. That was pretty much what I just popped in my head. I'd share it.
No, it's good. It's all, yeah, it's relevant. I'm just sharing the Inclusio video there where I've give you the information and go to the actual act itself of births, deaths and marriages, and I show you, so those that might want to look at that and have it presented to them. Mum, you've got to look at hospitals then, hospitals, military installations. You've got a Surgeon General, as you know, to prove that. You've got the language that you've used there, interesting, and I've not thought of it like that, but I'm not saying it's not relevant or viable to consider. But Mum, you're given life through the waters of Mum breaking, so you come from the water. You are deemed as a product, and products are delivered commercially. You're in a delivery room Yes, and so it's all rather dark again. The language and the terminology. Dock, yes, boats are docked oars. Or can be like a skull cap type device. It can be a rowing instrument. Various definitions of that, but
or something that you mine.
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, mind. Your mind is mind. Yeah, gold.
We're mined.
Yeah, the language, the hospital installation, the docked or delivering the product in a delivery room. It's all very dark and military
Delivery
installation.
suite.
Uh, yeah, delivery suite. Yes, a room. You are in a ward, and there are wards of the state. You've got wardens that are in the prison. So again, wards are warded. Yes, it's dark. It really is. It can be making something out of nothing, which is why we have to be careful how we interpret and reference all of this. But we can, through our discoveries, find that all is not what it seems. We're not products, we're not commercial, we are private biological entities and the children of God, if you want to look at it religiously. Spiritually, as Steiner and Goddard and Watts and others have put it, it's totally different. What we are, the energy, the consciousness that we all have, that they tap into and they utilize from us, our beings. It's it's just insane, which is why I say they're dark, transcendental nonsense of religious cults and temples. um, Military again running, so where we say we got a merger of church and state, the military language used in the English language, medical language, the financial language used of the banking system, the church language, the ecclesiastical language that's used in there, the Latin, the legalese that we get presented with whenever we're signing anything that's public, commercial, contractual. It involves legalese, such as a mortgage or a contract of employment, an agreement that you're signing. What we are presented with is multiple dimensions all merged into this so-called reality, the now time that we're in, that ultimately tries to usurp, subjugate us from our true, calling of nature, and usurps us using these languages and instruments and institutions through what is known as our ignorance. But this is where we have to look at how we feel about that when this information is presented to us and the facts of the matter, and there's a lot of conflict, isn't there? Too much conflict, to be fair. It's not wholesome and it's ungodly.
Do we just have to send in a letter of resignation to say we don't want to work for their company anymore? You want it just to be that simple?
Yeah, there's been talk about rescinding and retracting the birth certificate and rendering it back to Caesar, the state. But then you've got to be prepared to be deleted out the system. There is ways that we could, under commercial.
Well, interesting. When you look at the etymology, again, gotta love the words, haven't you? So, to give up something, surrender, abandon, submit, relinquish, blah, 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 an office, position, right, claim, renounce, relinquish, to check off, annul, cancel, give back, give up. Then when you go down, the notion is of making an entry, signum, opposite, on the credit side, balance in the former mark, and thus cancelling the claim it represents. So opposite to the credit side, so that's quite specific meaning, give up a position, the sense of to give oneself up to some emotion or situation. So we could just give up the debtor. What was that, Kevin?
I said volunteer.
Ultimately, I believe that the propositions of equity, trust law, the duties that they have as ministers in office of the executive directorate of the UK government, ministerial codes can be used. There are others out there that say that there are workarounds and legal remedies to this, which is all very well and good.
On that,
Yeah.
sorry, David, just to cut you up, but resign, re-sign. We re-sign on the correct side, on the creditor side. Re-sign, literally to make an entry in an account book, to mark.
Yeah, I like
You know,
it.
you're representing, you're representing, resigning,
We have the status, standing, and capacity to look at. Yes, our status from public to private, our standing from legal to lawful, and our capacity from person to man. And how we do that, how we go about that, from debtor to creditor. It is a
you
conundrum.
resign and re-sign. Yeah.
To notify them that we are taking authority, control, claiming, we claim and hold them to account and notify them to claim the birthright, which is ours, the mineral. When we claim, when we're on about claiming and the credit, the mineral and energy rights of the company of the UK, which has made capital gains from privatisation, basically, and we're claiming the mineral and energy rights of, to name a few. You know, in this age of bankruptcy, all we can do is actually discharge charges. You can't use debts to pay debts. You're adding to the national debt. So we resign. Yes,
Well, it says here, it says to cancel the claim that it represents. The notion is of making an entry, signum, opposite, on the credit side, balancing the former mark and thus cancelling the claim that it represents. The specific meaning, give up a position.
in essence, yes, but we have to remember this, that when we go to the institution, the state, the church, the higher courts, courts of equity, and we present our claim, their rules are, even in high courts of equity of England under common law, it still remains, the fact still remains that the claimant is required to provide the burden of proof and the material facts of the matter. So when you said that, my inner Dave was thinking, so we need to resign. Okay, it's good, I like it, it's tangible, but then we have to then evidence, because the institution, courts, establishment, crown, etc., will pretend they know nothing and that we are insane and might want to section us for trying to exit as legal surety, trustee, debtor, etc. So whenever anybody comes up with anything like this, I always come back with, great, so put that down on paper and evidence it so it's irrefutable and it's understandable and it's tangible and it's factually based, as if you're going to present that to somebody who knows nothing, for them to have a look at it and you can instruct them on what you require from them, from their duties and obligations in their fiduciary capacity. So you're right, and I agree with what you've said, but the facts of the matter remain, you know, through the practice directions, through the burdens of proof, that we have to outline what is and what we want, and we instruct them in their capacity to administer that and bring us into equitable remedy and relief. So we would then be required as the claimant to provide irrefutable facts of the matter. So yes, what you've said is right, but what we have to learn to do is to put it into terminology which is understandable and recognisable, the terms and conditions of what we require of them to do, and then look at enforcing all of that. So what you've said is great and it's right, but what I'm saying is to prove that and to evidence that at law levels for them to carry out the wishes and, well, the requirements, and to administer the estate and move us from public to private and to get all that done is a totally different ball game. Isn't it? Yeah. I don't know what you mean, Claire. What is it that you require of me? What is the problem and what is the remedy? I'm all ears. Off you go. Where is your paperwork? I'm happy to oblige. Let's go. And now we're left with, you know. Do you hear me?
Interesting though, with regards to the whole you say about them sectioning you. One thing to bear in mind, viewers that are listening, if any mental health thing comes up, is just because you might have, you know, depression or anxiety, or which they could consider a mental health difficulty or issue or illness, it doesn't mean you've got deprivation of liberty. So when my dad was terminally ill with cancer, because it had spread to his brain, he wasn't thinking clearly, and they had to do an assessment to assess whether he was capable of making his own decisions. And that's when, and they did a deprivation of liberty assessment on him. So that, to use that to rebut if they do bring in, you know, you have any issues with them claiming the mental health route, try that stance.
Oh, bless. Thank you for that. And yes, we're here for facts. If it's your belief that I am mentally unstable, then I would like to know, number one, are you medically qualified? Number two, if you are medically qualified, what are your qualifications? If it's just a belief, an assumption, you know, can you assert that factually? Because we're not here for beliefs, we're here for law, as Kevin and I talked about before. You may believe or think, but those are not facts. You know, we can put that. Please keep your. What did you say to me, Kevin? No, you said something quite concise that I'm struggling to remember, but you're usually good with recalling and stepping in or helping out when you said.
What was it regarding?
Mental health. When a judge or a banker says, I believe that you might be requiring, your mental health is of a concern. What you're saying and what you're on about doesn't seem to be normal or logical, and I'm concerned for your mental health. What would you say to somebody that said that to you in a judicial venue?
Well, much like with the DWP assessors, who are you? Where'd you get that authority? What are your qualifications? As you just said, you know, if that's your opinion, then we better have a look at some insurance here, because we've got a problem. Are we here for law? Or are we here for your opinion?
You make a claim. We go back to the practice directions and maxims and axioms and etc. If you're making a claim, I require the evidence of which you make that claim. If you have no evidence and it's based on my conduct here today, I am able to articulately, concisely and spontaneously, logically give you valid, referenceable reasons for my belief. We've got rights that are enshrined at law and, in law, if you like, but at law with regards to fundamental religious, social, political beliefs. And if you ignore my rights and my belief systems under the various international governances, then you will be held accounts to breach of my rights, religious, social and political. Look at the state of society nowadays, everyone. It's gone upside down, inside out. Doctors asking men if they're pregnant, for one. Things like that. Society has transformed and changed in such a way. Such things that some of us have seen are just non-computable, nonsensical. So again, it's my belief and my right to hold these opinions, but just for the record, what my belief is and what I base it can be evidenced articulately and academically, legally, lawfully, via dictionaries, via acts, statute, historical references, publication. So we go down that route as well. And what we're doing now is we've diverted from the subject matter, because when they feel the case, the line is the defence is not going their way, and you're putting them into a corner, they will articulate and converse in a way to get you off track. That's why they shout at you. So it's stamina. When someone shouts at you and makes you startled, you lose your train of thought, you lose your composure. They're trained well in how to divert us from the subject matter at hand, and if you deviate from that and get drawn into something and stumble and get a little bit agitated, then you start to not to have your composure, you've lost the direction, and you could end up in uncharted waters. So we have to, that's why we always say your paperwork should precede you. Your paperwork, your narrative, everything should be done prior to any kind of civil judicial appearance. You should be able to add references and be able to articulate it by saying, I refer you to my paperwork. Boom. You see, so therefore, if you think I'm insane or you think my mental health is of a concern, as Kevin has said, as I've said, and I now refer you to my paperwork, please highlight and tell me the area of which you find an area of mental health concern. Boom. Again, so you've got to remember to keep that composure and to try not to deviate from the subject matter, and the referencing of, I refer you to my paperwork. If you have no paperwork and you're turning up at a venue such as a civil issue in a judicial venue, and you're going to try and win the matter verbally, you don't stand much of a chance at all, because they're masters at this. They're there to earn money. If they can't get any money out of you, they're going to try and find a way to cut it down and to either, and we would argue that we're in the wrong jurisdiction. We need to have the matters adjourned and put to a proper court. That's why we emphasise courts of equity, and either they discharge the charges or they move it to a more relevant venue, jurisdiction and court, so then we can have these matters heard before the correct adjudicator, and parties and all are entitled to a fair trial by jury. And we referenced the rights there that are enshrined internationally. All are equal before the law, and we have to then, try to articulate these types of responses and hold them to account again. But the paperwork part would be of most advantage to you. If you don't have the paperwork, and you can get the paperwork or you can formulate the paperwork, I require an adjournment of these proceedings in order to allow me to prepare the sufficient paperwork to defend these claims. Boom. Do it that way, you know what I mean? And then quickly scramble to try and get everything sorted.
Would you say defend or administer these claims?
Administer to either or. Defend, you are defending them, you are seen as that, you're not admitting any liability, you're just the words that you use. Administer these claims, to administer the controversy surrounding these claims. I'm just off the top of my head, but that's relevant and good to say. Thinking on the fly is great, on these private chats, but when money's riding on it and it can be quite consequential to you and a detriment to you, you need to have it well prepared, don't you?
Well, yeah, you do, but also don't forget you're quite entitled, if they say something to you, quite entitled to say, can I take a minute or two before I respond? Slow it down.
Yeah.
Slow it down. You're in control. They ask you a question and you, rather than just spewing something out, stop, ask them to repeat it, and then ask them for a little bit of time. You're perfectly entitled to do that before you respond.
And that goes the same for officers, traffic officers, policemen, peacekeepers, constables, state troopers, teachers, doctors, anybody that's requiring of you information. Sometimes you're not obliged to answer questions like that. You must also remember then, with Kevin saying that, am I obliged to answer that? I don't believe I'm obliged. What relevance has that got to, depending on whom is asking the questions and where you are? Then also we have to remember, like for instance, a knock at the door happened at Anne-Marie's new place, and there was a debt collector agent there asking for a named person that wasn't recognised. And so I said, I do believe your records are incorrect. This property has been recently acquired via a new mortgage, and the names that you've just asked for are not the known names of the previous owners of this property, and they are not the names that are on the new mortgage agreement. And he said, well, who are you? And I said, I beg your pardon. And he said, who are you? Who am I speaking to? Who are you? I said, am I obligated to answer that question? With all due respect, I've just given you an answer. The people you're looking for do not reside here. So you need to check your records and come back again if you believe they're right. For now, I'm going to bid you good day. And I closed the door politely and calmly. But he wasn't happy, not at all, not by a long shot. But I was refusing to give one.
Because they're abusive, horrible men.
Aren't they just?
Brilliant. Love it.
Yeah, are we obligated? Are we obliged to? What has that got to do with this issue, you know, and things like that? So,
can you say object in a magistrate's court?
And don't forget, you don't have, here's another thing. If you feel you're under any duress, especially people at the door and that, you don't have to make any decisions there and then because you're under duress.
under the threat of the full force.
Yeah, adrenaline hijacks the prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking part of your brain. So, it stops you thinking clearly. So you do need that minute, taking that time, like you've both said.
You can ask for it. You're perfectly entitled. Just be polite and say, you know, before I was let me just consider can I have a couple of minutes to consider my response? Nice and polite. I can't say no. Just like I say, take control of it. Don't, you know, because the urge is to just go, ask me questions. Just take a breath, take control.
Can you say object to the other solicitor, that is, you know, the opposing side in a magistrate's, or is that more criminal?
No, you can. They're saying coming out with some nonsense. Of course you can.
Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen?
And also, when you ask a question of anybody and they remain silent, especially in a court, then that silence is deemed as, you know.
You can state that.
Mm-hmm.
You can state that. I'll take your silence as agreement to the statement. You can say that. So, yeah, if you met with silence. To say, just slow it down. Just don't let them. It's your, well, technically it's not, but it's your hearing.
It's
Say just,
yeah,
just polite but firm.
And you have to remember, another good reason for having paperwork is that if you try to use private remedy, such as, what do I mean by that? Simplify it. I would like to transfer and discharge using the 1882 Bills of Exchange, for instance, and you're talking about council tax in a magistrate, then it wouldn't really be fitting in a public venue, public courthouse, then to try to vocalise the private remedy. Again, that's when you would be referring the clerk to look at the paperwork, or the clerk, and to inform the judge about the requirements and honourability and the offer. We're not refusing to pay, or bringing to attention that the plaintiff is actually in a position of fault. And before we get into the argumentation and the defence of claims, often we'll find that there is no valid claim to be, and the process, due process, civil court practice, practice directions have been broken. And if you can prove that, evidence it. When we talk about proof of service, sending something in a court, can you prove that you have corresponded to the party? It doesn't have to be the top, highest, most expensive, first class, next day delivery at $6.95. As long as you've got a signature. I send things second class signed for, which is a couple of pounds if I need to, and as long as I've got the receipt and I've got the referencing from the post office of the sticker. I've got the signature, hopefully, from Royal Mail when it's actually gone. Whatever signature's there, it should be the recipient signature or the authorised recipient on behalf of, the secretary or the office of, signing on behalf. Then you can prove that you've communicated. Can then the other party, the claimant, the plaintiff, prove that they've also, in line with the practice directions, served you? And if they can't, then we can break down these technicalities within the practice directions, the civil procedure rules, and say, I can come to this court with clean hands and in honour. I can prove and back up everything that I say, so it's not alleged. These are facts, and they're provable in a court of law, in due process, in line with the practice directions of the civil procedure rules. Can the plaintiff and the claimant do the same, please? I think you'll find that, right, in that case, stop everything. There is no case to answer because there has been a breach. And if they choose to proceed and railroad you, then that's when we bring to attention that not all courts are final. Misconduct in public office, fiduciary capacity, things like this, and we would then look for a review of some kind and to hold them to account and to get remedy and redress and damages done later on, which is sometimes will happen,
I watched that Great British Mortgage Swindle the other day, even though it's, Benicio, and I don't really get a good vibe out of him, really. I thought, well, I'll have a listen, see what it's like. And quite interestingly, the courts, when they went through his family's trust, they weren't allowed to appeal or anything, apparently. They blocked all of that. So how can they say that you can't appeal? How can they do that? Is that possible? Or is that just hype for the video?
we'd need to see evidence of that fact, because surely that is a crime. That's criminal. If all are equal under the law, and
He said his case didn't lacked merit.
well, we would require a second independent assessment. You would have to then take that as an appellant to the higher courts and see what they said, and also construct a claim in such a way that, or even employ, if you believed in it and you knew it was right, then that's the time where you'd have to try to employ legal counsel of some kind and get them in on it and say, is this case got any merit? And then do it and go through. I know we are supposedly against all of that, but in some instances, just a second opinion, and pay for that second opinion, get the corrections made, and then go back and try again. Failures to present articulately, they should say why it has no merit, who is saying it has no merit, on what authority, and whose liability as well, you know what I mean, and hold them to account, and also get second opinions, try to be going to a higher court, getting it independent. There are regulatory bodies as well, aren't there, Kevin, that look at this as well, that you can also involve.
Yeah, I mean, they might be able to shut it down in their jurisdiction, that, there's always somewhere else to go. I mean, ultimately the Supreme Court, so it's not over by any means. It's just, it's another way of them making it difficult, isn't it? But yeah, of course, but by refusing you an appeal or any move or any further appeals, then that's your access to law out the window.
In the end, they did that. They did a counter strike, I think, in the end, a counter claim for a summary judgment, which went, I think, to the High Court and got through.
So there you go then. So there you go, yeah. You have to know your rights and enforce them, because that's what we're saying here. You can be as honourable and in the right as you can be, and you can have a valid claim. But if they don't like it and they don't want it to go through, and you're a litigant in person, for instance, and you're representing pro se, then they will shut it down and close the door, and it's upon you to then retain and reserve and enforce your rights. And if you can't, then that's gatekeeping. It's basically known as gatekeeping, yeah. But anyway, it's 11:20. Let's look at saying good night. That's the long goodbye chat done.
Yeah. Oh God.
So thank you to the chat room. It's been quite busy in there. I'm sorry I haven't
Yeah.
read everything out. I've been keeping an eye on it. And E Greens is a new name I haven't seen that's been very productive and active there. Andy, Jerry, CM, Claire, thank you to you all.
Yeah.
And to Kevin and to our Claire for interaction. Tony, I think's there. Byrne.
Anders earlier on.
Seen Lisa and James, I believe.
Yeah, Lisa was around. I meant to give her a shout out, or both of them a shout out. I did forget. So hopefully she'll listen back. Sending love to you both. Stop working so hard. I know that it's impossible where you live.
Yeah, I hope the show's been
Yeah,
entertaining.
thanks, guys.
No worries. It's all good. If Albert's still about, he's probably ducked off now. I know he's working, but yeah, I will give you a ring, Albert. I see a message the other day from the beginning of last month, I think. Bloody useless I am, mate. Yeah, I'll get round to it. It's got messages around for a few days, so which is nice. Yeah, so I'm sort of busy for the next 2 days, really, but it's all good. But thanks everybody for listening. Hope it was entertaining in one form or another. And much love to you all. We'll see you real soon.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Kevin. Much love to
Yeah,
you.
thank you, guys. Might have a good bank holiday.
I'm back in the warehouse tomorrow, 6 a.m. for 4 days, so I'll see you on the flip side and wish you well. Hope you have a good bank holiday. The sun shines and you spend it with
The
some...
spraying is low.
Good night, all.
Night all.
Night.
Cheers, Dave. I'll catch up with you
Thank
tomorrow.
You, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah. Much love. Thank you, Kevin and Claire.
No worries.
See you soon. Butter Moon.
See ya.